everybody? Welcome back. My name is Liam and I pick fights each and every week on this channel. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're going live to talk UFC Vegas 76 with my guy, MMA Jewish Bettor, and we're doing it late at night on a Friday. So normally you guys know we come to you on Monday or Sunday night. We do the first look. We come back on Thursday with Bets and Banter, the panel show. But this week on the Bets and Banter show, for whatever reason, the chat wasn't updating live. So wanted to come back, do something a little more interactive, something a little bit fun, kick back with my guy, friend of the show, MMA Jewish Bettor. Welcome back, brother. How are you today?
Well, hi, my brother. I'm here to answer any questions. 2 in the morning, 1 in the morning where I'm at. If we go to the West Coast, it's a 11, still a last day before. So we're here to get this money, my man. You already know what it is.
Absolutely, brother. You know that. And it's only for the true warriors, the night owls, the soldiers, the degenerates, the people that really want to get the information in. So appreciate you guys rocking with us this late into the evening. But if you're catching us on the replay in the morning, appreciate you too. Going to be breaking down these fights as we go, talking through the fights. If you guys have questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and fire those away in the chat and we will address them as we go. Going to make it an interactive show in the process. But my man, we don't have any format. We don't have anything we're tied to. The man isn't telling us what buttons to press tonight. So we're just going to do our own thing, have fun with it. And I think it's best that we start with the main event of the evening. You know, people are going to be thinking about the main event right off the rip because, you know, now that we've seen these two guys face off a little bit, got a little bit of an impression of what they look like next to each other. To be honest with you, I think Abus looks clearly like a better athlete. You know, Sean Strickland, he's obviously a guy who's put in time in the UFC. He's got the, Psycho Sean gimmick. He's got Mr. Apex, whatever it is. He's had a bunch of main event spots here. So he's done a lot of the right things. He stays pretty active as a fighter. You'll remember he did the bookends, last event of the year, first event of the year. Not common, but he's just a guy that's sort of, a fill-in for the UFC whenever they need somebody, whenever they want to fill, a top spot in the middleweight division. They kind of just give you Sean Strickland, see where you're at. But they haven't really had him take that big step up yet. When they had him fight Alex Pereira, you could tell that Pereira was kind of the A-side there, was an underdog in the fight, but I thought that was a good spot for Pereira. He's a very dangerous guy, and Sean doesn't fight to a very intelligent game plan more often than not. You know, he normally fights with a lot of ego, a lot of bravado, and he goes out there and tries to swing hands with people. And when you do that, eventually the bill comes due. It happened against Pereira. He had a very difficult fight against Jerry Cannonier for the same reasons. I thought he probably won that fight. I did bet him that night, but alas, he left it close. He never tries to finish anybody. So there's just a lot of things that give me pause when I'm betting on Sean Strickland. Then on top of that fact, when you look at his run as a favorite in the UFC, it's just been, ho-hum, right? If you bet him every time as a favorite, you got your money back. That's it. You didn't make any money. So he's kind of a guy that puts you in volatile situations at times. And that time against Alex Pereira, all the talk was about the experience, right? Alex Pereira still has less professional MMA fights than Abus Magomedov has had in the last 5 years. It's like people have all these narratives that they put in their head, but then I think sometimes it's an oversimplification. Abus isn't just going to lay down for Sean Strickland because he's had, more UFC fights, right? He's just another guy. They're the same age. So for me, slight value to the underdog, if anything. I would not be laying Sean Strickland personally, but I think if you could get Sean Strickland live at a plus money number after he loses a round or two, maybe that's the way to get in here. Because I do think Abus is going to keep this competitive while he's fresh, but I don't know that he can go 15, 25 hard minutes with somebody like Sean Strickland. So that's the fascinating element of this fight. My brother, I haven't heard you talk about it this week. What are you thinking?
No, and I usually stay quiet on the main events because that's where the books, that most of their attention is focused on that main event. Obviously, the public's going to be betting that one a little bit heavier than the rest of the fights. But man, I think Abus Magomedov is a powerful guy, just like Pereira, and he definitely could put out Sean Strickland early. But it's just like you said, the longer this fight goes, I think that's going to favor Sean Strickland. He has the experience. And I think the biggest note in this fight is the level of competition, and that's something to be noted. And I feel like that doesn't get bought into the market a lot of the times, right? This guy Abus Magomedov is coming off a lot of finishes. If we really do look at the betting handle and just the overall general consensus, I think this is a very back and forth fight. There could be arguments to be made for both sides. I'm gonna stay away from this one and all, but I think it's a Strickland or pass spot for me. We just really don't know what we're getting here with Abus Magomedov yet. I mean, his last few fights have all ended in the first round. So, yeah, just like you said, Sean Strickland, he can either get the job done or just have those performances where he just leaves it in the hands of the judges and it's just a little bit too close. So, what we got to worry about here, though, is him getting finished, I think, because I think in a 5-round fight, Sean Strickland is going to get that all day. The later this fight goes, he's going to be able to take over. And we've seen him do that before to other Russians, other guys like Imavov, where he came in on short notice, and Imavov's cardio seemed to just fade as that fight went on. Could see a similar situation here with Abus Magomedov. So it's a Strickland or pass situation for me. But on Bet Online right now, I think Strickland under 1 takedown or under half a takedown is sitting at like -175, and he might try to take the guy down, but he didn't try to take Alex Pereira down. And I'm just saying, Sean Strickland shooting a takedown, you don't see that every day.
Hell yeah, man. I think at -175, that makes a lot of sense. He's mixed it in sometimes late in fights, 4th and 5th rounds, but I agree. He's not a guy who's primarily going to go out there and push a lot of different paths to victory. He likes to throw the jab and sometimes the right hand, maybe put a high kick up there. There's really not that much sophistication to Sean Strickland's game. It's just a lot of the basics applied over and over and over again. Shout out to our guy Camden in the comments, says, was debating going to bed after my poker game, saw the notification and said, guess I'm rolling one and doing some tape study. You absolute soldier. That's the exact kind of person that we're looking to watch this show. So shout out to you, Camden. That's what we're doing, man. We're going to dig through this. And we've seen a couple interesting angles here roll through the chat as well. I know that you were saying the unders on takedowns for Sean Strickland. Our guy likes the over, basically Strickland most significant strikes compared to Abus here. Strickland in almost every fight that he's in is going to throw more significant strikes than his opponent. And that's almost what leaves him more vulnerable, in my opinion, against these guys that have big power. Because when you see somebody like Strickland, he's opening up against Jack Hermanson. Jack Hermanson doesn't have anything to do back, that's really going to stop him and dissuade him. But then that fight still comes down to a split decision because Sean will give and take, right? He's not afraid of that. He's not somebody that's going to shy away from that. And even against heavier hitters. So against Jared Cannonier, it shook him up a little bit at times, but he stayed patient. He stayed disciplined. He kept plying his craft. Could have went his way, could have went the other way. But then when you see against Alex Pereira, that kind of willingness to engage is what ended up biting him. Against Dustin Stoltzfus, Abus Magomedov didn't have much of a chance to show us what he could do. But what he did show in that short time was he targeted a linear opponent with strikes up the middle. And then he found him with thunderous uppercuts in the clinch, just seemed to know exactly what he needed to do to finish the fight. Very intentional. I liked his shot selection. So for me, I could see the levels of sophistication that the UFC would have to see to put him in this kind of main event spot. It's no guarantee, but for me, and I'm curious what you think about this. This is the parallel that's come to my mind all week. Yuri Prohaska, right? A guy who comes in, he's got a lot of experience, maybe not against the upper echelon guys, but he's got a King Mo win, and he's got a couple wins that you could look at and say, hey, at that aged okay. But then what really stood out, he gets the big win, the big finish, and the UFC they were like all in. They pushed a lot of stock into this guy, take him from a big win and a big finish to a main event right after. And I said to myself, why would they do that? Why would they do that with this Abus Magomedov guy? He's 32, just like Strickland. So it's time to move for these guys. We're going to get a middleweight contender, in my opinion, coming out of this fight. And Sean Strickland's been on the precipice. He's had some opportunities. He's talked a lot of shit to Izzy and whatnot on the stage last year. But it was just this time last year that Alex Poatan Pereira sent his ass to the Shadow Realm. He's been training with Alex Pereira in the lead up to this fight, which I think is a blessing and a curse. Because Sean Strickland, we know he's not going to go there and be like, hey, Alex, please don't hit my chin. I have a fight coming up. He's going to get in there and trade in the pocket with this guy in the training room as well. So I feel like Sean Strickland, a guy that has the skills and the potential and the upside to do it. But is he going to put it all together for you on fight night? That's always the question you got to ask. So fascinating fight, man, to kick us off in the main event. I'm going with the dog ever so slightly. You're going with the favorite. I don't think either one of us are extremely bullish with conviction, but for me, it's just I'm riding with Uncle Dana and the boys, right? I'm riding with Mick Maynard and them guys in the back who are just looking at this guy going, can he go out there and knock out Sean in the early going? Can he mix up this middleweight division? I feel like middleweight's stagnant. I feel like they need new contenders. I feel like the crop of guys that they have right now isn't getting people buzzing. It's not getting their champion off the couch either. He's not super excited. So I feel like you get an Abus Magomedov or, what's his name, Arman Petrosian, and these kind of guys, foreign guys that the UFC can sell up if they get a highlight reel going. That, I think, is what the UFC is trying to do. And we saw it with Imavov. Didn't work out, right? It's not like it's a foolproof strategy, but that was one that was tough. Imavov's expecting to fight Gastelum. It's on short notice, and it's up a weight. And what have we seen from Sean Strickland? I was criticizing the guy's inability to finish, but the last guy to finish Brendan Allen up a weight class at 195, that was where Sean Strickland looked his career best, threw 100 significant strikes at 195-pound catchweight in 7.5 minutes, right? So it's like when Sean Strickland's on, he could look like the best guy in the world. But when we've seen him at 85, he's looked a lot more human for whatever reason. 195, 205. He looked better in those fights against Imavov and against Brendan Allen. But then at 185, he just looks more like himself. It's a weird little quirk of the fight game, but I think even the small amount of weight that Sean Strickland cuts is a detriment to his performance, just a slight bit. And we definitely saw that at 170, where he looked a lot more human in a lot more fights. And additionally, the kicks. That's the last thing I'll note here as we move to the co-main event is the kicks from Easy Dos Santos, right? He hit him with that spinning kick, and Sean has this like classic, like old boxing style guard, right? With the hands here and whatever. Kickers can get to him at times. And I think that's what I'm looking forward to here on the Abu side. Can he leverage that? Can he use his kicks to his advantage? Because against Dustin Stoltzfus, he was coming out kicking very hard right off the rip. And Sean, that's the time to catch him. As the fight goes on, he's like a guy rolling downhill. He just starts to get momentum. But I think in the early going, it's going to be a lot trickier. So fascinating stuff, man. But a fight that has Twitter in an uproar. It's got all the people in the YouTube comments section as well going to war with each other. It's Damir Ismagulov taking on Grant Dawson in the co-main event of the evening. This is a really tricky one for me. And I'll tell you, my gut lean here is to just completely pass on this fight because I think, number one, if you are on the Dawson side, a lot of the value's been extracted. Let's go and look at what the current best fight odds line is on this fight. Sports Best Fight Odds has it separated into two categories. So the best price on both these guys is chalk, my man. You're not doing too great in terms of value, let's say, on either side. But then the question is, how do you handicap the fight? Because if you think one of these guys has a really clear favorite status, then Pick'em's a great price. But exactly. I think if you were on the Dawson side, right, a lot of the value has been extracted. So what do you think about this fight, and are you looking to target it from a betting standpoint?
Well, I think if if you look too far into the line movement, sometimes it could get you off of a good play. And yeah, for sure, appreciate that, Alex. And I think Damir Ismagulov is a spot in this here. But I don't think he should be some type of massive favorite. I'm not extremely leaning towards him. I believe he should be sitting around a -140 in this spot. Yeah, he did lose his last fight, but look at the level of competition he's fought. Guys like Arman Sarukian. He has a win, albeit split, but it's against Guram Kutatalidze, who's just, he's on this card. We might even talk about him in a little bit. But he's just absolutely fantastic as well. Damir just does everything right to me, man. He has a good jab. His wrestling is good. His wrestling defense is good. His grappling on the ground, his get-ups are good. So for me, I know Dawson is also on an 8-fight winning streak, and that's the thing. I could see why people would want to bet on Dawson as well. And if you're on the Damir side, you're almost thinking, how am I getting such a good line on this? Now, this isn't something I would put a ton of money on, but I could see a possible bet on Damir Ismagulov for half a unit. And if this line flips by tomorrow and I'm somehow I don't think it's gonna, but if I somehow get this guy at a +110 price tag, I just don't see how I don't bet on Damir here. Everything he showed me inside the octagon shows me that he should be able to beat Dawson, especially the later this fight goes. I think he just has the better cardio overall. I think he's going to be able to defend shots from Dawson. I think this might be a 29-28 decision. But I could see him winning 30-27 as well. I think he hits him with the jab, gets in, even maybe uses some wrestling of his own here. But I think he definitely wins round 3. I'm going with Ismagulov here. Hope I get a better line tomorrow. I would take him at this price as well, but probably for just a half a unit.
I like where your head's at. Let me pull up Ismagulov's Instagram here. As crazy as that sounds, I just want to take a look and see my guy's physique standing off against Dawson. I saw this earlier, but I just want to take it in again. Basically, the things that stood out to me about this matchup, because I had been for a very long time on the I think Grant Dawson's a fraud kind of bandwagon, and not to say he's bad, just to say relative to expectations. That's always what we're
overrated.
comparing.
You mean? Yeah, right. Exactly.
Precisely. So it's not to say that if he was to fight any random guy in the UFC, you say, oh, this guy has no chance to win. But it's like, if he's going to be pushed against the upper echelon like he's one of them, maybe I'm going to, take my stand against him. But I've seen noticeable growth over time, right? And I have definitely seen a guy that went from, a James Krause type of fighter, right? Doing random stuff and also trying to be athletic about it, but knowing kind of what wins around. Like, he just seemed like a fighter that had a lot of the right tools by the wrong end and just, had some athleticism and some enthusiasm, made it work. But it didn't seem all put together, right? It didn't seem all polished. I do think he's starting to get a little bit better. Training partner Thiago Moises, primary partner at ATT, and they've been working together on grappling and getting better and better and better. And when he submitted Jared Gordon, dude, that was eye-opening for me. Because Jared Gordon, if you're going to beat him most of the time, I think you got to knock him out. You got to take him out of the fight. Paddy Pimblett probably didn't win that decision, right? So, like, Jared Gordon, when it goes to the cards, judges love him. He does a lot of things right. He stays in the fight. He stays poised. He stays patient. He throws his shots. He wrestles people hard. He does a lot of things well over 15 minutes. And that fight told me, I was like, wow, this guy literally outpaced him. And if you had told me Grant Dawson's outpacing somebody like Jared Gordon in round 3 hard like that and just outworking him for a finish, I never would have believed you, because I bet Ricky Glenn plus 400 and I couldn't believe I didn't cash that one, right? Like, Grant Dawson was on death's door there, looked terrible. And that's the fight that gives me pause here, because Demiris Magulov has some of the same things Ricky Glenn does. He's awkward. He's kind of hard to control. He's kind of hard to get a hold of, hard to really muscle down. But I do think that in this kind of fight, I could see Grant Dawson having success if he gets to dominant grappling positions. We think about Arman, right? And we watch what Arman did last week. He was a huge favorite against another BJJ guy. So a guy that's got skills on the ground. He took him down and got onto good positions early. But then you see he's very conservative, right? Like, Arman just knows what he has to do to win a round. He knows what he has to do to win and hold on to a position. And so we saw some times where he's holding the wrist, just kind of sagging his weight. We didn't see a lot of hunting for subs. Whereas I think in this fight especially, Grant Dawson, I believe, is going to know this isn't a fight that I win, striking. This isn't a fight where I win going tit for tat on the feet and trying to find out who's better. It's a fight that I win by being really, really sticky, ornery, get in this guy's face, grab a hold of him, just like Arman was trying to do, but maximize on an opportunity. And you and I both train, so we kind of know there's some guys that they're not going to be, a guy that has consistent, perfect position every time. But if they get you once, it could all be over, right? If they just hop into the right spot, you're like, oh my God, what a disaster. I did everything right, and then it all fell apart in an instant. That, for me, is what this fight could look like, where Demiris Magulov's doing everything right. He's stuffing a bunch of the takedowns, but he's a guy that's been admittedly in and out, half in, half out, not totally sure how much he's committed to the career. And in a really competitive division where everybody's super hungry and fighting and trying to position themselves in the division, I see somebody like Grant Dawson, who's 8-0-1 in his UFC run dating back to the Contender series, and he's a younger guy, and he's coming in with no bones about his confidence at a great gym, and he's talking about, I'm all in. There's no excuse about this fight. I will win this fight. Like, I'm like, God damn it. If you're lying, bro, you're a hell of a salesman. You got a future after fighting. So that's the thing for me that's kept me off, bro. Because truth be told, I thought about this fight. I bet Demir against Arman, right? At plus 180, I was like, Arman's a great fighter, but this is a two elite fighters. I got one at a plus money number. I got to take it. And I watched that fight, and I just said to myself, I was like, does Demir still want to do this anymore? Because there were times in that fight where I felt like he could have, bit down a little harder and gone a little. And he got out hustled. He got out hustled by a guy who wanted it a little bit more. because I don't think Arman is head and shoulders above him in the technique either. He does everything right, but Arman was more aggressive and offensive. And so even though they were tit for tat in the grappling exchanges, one guy's playing defense and one guy's on offense. And I think Grant Dawson will be on offense in the grappling in this fight. So that for me makes it hard to look away. But I missed my chance is how I feel about it. So also, I never want to move too radically in one direction, right? Just from a theoretical standpoint, if I think you're a fraud 5 fights ago, I don't want to be like, this guy's the second coming of Jesus Christ or whatever. It's just, you don't want to fall into the public perception either. So I think both guys, I mean, they're elite fighters, right? So if you got plus money numbers on an elite fighter, you're probably feeling pretty good about it. Grant Dawson, certainly more to prove in that regard, but I do think he will be an elite fighter before all is said and done at 155 pounds because of where he's at, because of who he's working with, and the level of commitment he's shown. So for me, that's a hard thing to fade, but admittedly, if you get a great fighter at a plus money number like Demir's trending towards, who could look that gift horse in the mouth?
Yeah, I just think if you didn't get in on the Grant Dawson side, I don't think just pass here. So if you didn't get in on it now, there's no point now. If you didn't get on it before at the plus number, I just don't think there's value at this point. I'd actually even be looking to bet on the Demir's Magomedov side, just from what I see inside the octagon. I try not to listen to the interviews. I try not to pay attention to the outside noise a lot of the times. You got to be very selective in a lot of that stuff. But it does factor in for something, and I'm trying to learn to like add that into my game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would say it's a small piece of the handicap, right? Like if a guy just doesn't have the skills to pay the bills, no amount of confidence or anything else is going to make a huge difference. But I do think that's something I always look for when we have a pick'em fight. When we have a fight that's close or that I can't get a strong read on, I say to myself, is there an X factor? Is there something that could distinguish here? And then I look at the youth and I look at the fact that it's a guy who's brimming with confidence. So those are the things I like. But again, it's to say how I'm picking between two close sides, 52-48, this kind of thing.
Maybe I could word it better. I try not to go out of my way to look for it, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think the more people focus on things that are hard to handicap, like motivation and things like that, the more you can lead yourself asunder. When we're trying to establish an edge on the market, it can be much more clear and quantifiable. If I think this guy gets 2 takedowns, he wins the fight. Then if I think he really wants to be there, I can't put a clear number on that. So that's why small piece of the cap, but for sure, man, I like to have people that think about fights differently as well, For sure. What a small world it would be if we all thought the same.
Exactly. And it really just depends on the situation. That's it. You know what I'm saying? And I actually think you're a little bit onto something in the Ismagulov fight. It's just the lack of volume in his fights. And like you said, does he really want to be there? And a young, hungry guy on the other end. Great breakdown, my man. Great breakdown.
Appreciate it, boss. So with that being said, we can move to the next one here. We got the featured bout of the evening at welterweight, and a lot of great comments in the chat as well. So keep them coming, guys. I know our guy Billy W said, "What's your best bet?" Chat. So if you guys have a favorite bet on the card, anything like that, if you're wondering what we think about it, please go ahead on and ask, and I'll always give you a respectful but true answer. So if I disagree with your play, I'll let you know, but I won't do it by shitting on your play. I'll just tell you how I feel. So appreciate you guys for the interaction. Let's keep it rolling. We got Max Payne Griffin. This is a really tricky one in my view because a 13-year age gap is not something that I like to bet into very often unless I'm taking the younger guy. And in this case, the younger guy is a minus 250 favorite that has lost rounds in the UFC against lower level guys than Max Griffin. So it's not like he is a perfect product, but he is a guy that you expect going to make huge jumps between his fights. He's still very young. He's extremely athletic. I do think he's slightly more athletic than Max Griffin. Max Griffin, though, is an athletic fighter. Despite being 37 years of age, bounces in and out of range well. Very powerful guy naturally, lands with a lot of impact. So I think it's a really fascinating fight. I think both guys are in danger of getting chinned at some point in this contest. So for me, that makes for a very exciting featured bout of the evening. What do you think about this one?
Man, I feel like I got to go with the younger guy in Morales here. If we look at Magny's last few performances, his last fight, let me pull up Tapology here. That's the one thing I don't have. I don't have the fights up just like you do. If you could even tell me real quick who his last fight was. I remember the Neil
For
Magny
Max
fight.
Griffin, it was Tim Means, his last fight.
Tim Means. Exactly. Older guy, kind of fading out. He hasn't really fought a younger guy as of
Just like
recently, if
Neil
I can
Magny
remember.
before that. Just like
That's what I
Carlos
said.
Condit before that. Last
Right,
3 fights,
right.
all older guys, for sure.
When are we getting a younger, when are we getting a younger? I guess Keenan Song, that's an old guy as well, if I'm not mistaken. He took care of Ramiz Brahimaj, but remember Ramiz Brahimaj, bro? Like really just not the
I think
best.
he was a blue belt, like a very high level blue belt, obviously, but like just a blue belt grappler was like his
That's
highest
it.
credentials coming in.
That's it. And Griffin did exactly. I think that was the fight where Griffin just busted his ear open,
Popped
right?
his ear, dude.
That
That's
was
so gross.
nasty, fool. That was nasty. And I really like Morales here because we know with the age gap. I'm not sure what the exact percentage is, but we know the younger fighter wins a ton of the times. And I just think this is one of those fights where we see some improvements from Morales. He's gonna have a very tough test and a veteran in Max Griffin, but I don't think the UFC would give him this test if they weren't confident he was going to win here. Young up and coming guy versus aging veteran. This is really a gatekeeper role for Max Griffin here. If he, isn't able to beat this lower level of competition, he's going to take a little bit of hit to his stock. But I don't think it's that bad because Michael Morales is a good young up and coming fighter. I think this. I do see a side for Griffin why people will be taking him, but just with that age at that price, I understand it, but at that age, I can't do it. If I have to make a pick, it's clearly Morales in the spot. I think he's going to be able to get the job done, but at that price, though, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I feel you, man.
Small parlay, maybe, but no way I could bet that straight.
It's so funny because one thing, and I wanted to address this on the show as well, so it's a good thing you brought this up, is, I think Morales is going to win this fight as well. But I think that if you were to bet on this fight, you should probably be betting on Max Griffin or not betting on the fight because of the pricing, right? And so if you guys have ever, heard somebody say just pick winners and these kind of things, I don't even disagree with it from a theoretical standpoint in some sense, right? Where I don't want to bet on something that I think is going to lose, just for the hell of it. But if I think that something's going to happen more frequently than the odds imply, that is by definition value. That is what value is. That's what we're looking for. So if I don't think it happens any more than the odds makers do, then betting on it is just throwing my money up in the air and hoping it comes back in my hand. Hope the wind doesn't catch it, right? It's like that. Mm-hmm. That's a very risky proposition. Whereas if I feel very confident that Morales should be minus 300, well, then minus 240 is a good price. Okay, let's go ahead to the window. So that's, I think, something important to just talk about for people that are newer to the space. It's just, I think Morales will win this fight. But I think if Morales was priced at minus 185, that would be fine to me. I think that would probably be a fair price. A true odds of minus 185 plus 185 makes some sense. So you're probably getting slight value at plus 200 on Max Griffin. But is it enough value to get you off the couch for a 13-year age gap against a guy who, in most of his fights, lands a knockdown and doesn't finish against older fighters? So are his finishing instincts poor, or are the guys he's fighting just really durable? I don't know. I mean, we've seen Neil Magny get club and subbed. We've seen him get just easily out-grappled and submitted by good guys, but just like we've seen him finish before. It's not like he can't be put away. Santiago Ponzinibbio flattened him with a jab in the 4th round, I believe in Argentina. So again, it's not something that can happen, but Max Griffin drops him, hurts him so bad, has him on wobbly leg. He doesn't seem like a guy who always puts it together to finish when he has people hurt. And so when you go the 15 minutes with Carlos Condit and you do these things, I have visions of Max Griffin winning the 1st round of this fight, winning the 2nd round of this fight, maybe, outlanding him on jab, and then just getting knocked dead in the 3rd round. Because he doesn't keep a great pace over 15. That's been his biggest struggle. And when you're doing that against older guys that are slowing down with you, it's no problem. But we saw Fugitt have success in round 2, and Morales didn't just fold up shop. He didn't break. He came out in round 3 and he finished him. So for me, I just feel like Morales showed the skills I wanted to see to think he's going to get it done. But let me look at the prices on this fight because I think his knockout is like plus 180. I would never, ever, ever in a million years play something like that.
No.
And
look,
not enough value.
We've talked about this before too, man. There's always that parlay buster, and we got to look at it from this standpoint. Do we think it's Morales? And go back and look at Max Griffin's last few fights. Like I just said, he hasn't fought anybody that can match his athleticism. He's going up against guys where he's the more athletic guy in all these situations, which is kind of shocking with him being the older fighter. And in this situation, the roles are reversed. I understand, he's not able to get Fugit out of there, but he looks good in all these fights, man. I'm telling you, Michael Morales has talent. He does a lot of things correctly as well. I think he's going to get the job done here, man. Be careful if you're thinking about betting the Griffin side here. I think you're getting pulled in by the number, kind of how you were saying before, because there is an end of kind of just pick winners, but at the same time, you have to find that number. That number is super important here, man. And really, you're not trying. You're trying to pick winners, but at the same time, you're keeping that number in mind because if the number didn't matter, the books would just throw it out at plus at whatever number. You know what I mean? Even money every single time.
Every fight would be minus 110, right? If it didn't matter, if it's just picking winners.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense.
A little more complicated.
Way more complicated, and then it's just about determining exactly what percentage you think that that said bet is going to happen, which is a lot more difficult and easier said than done. So that's the thing, and I think that's what a lot of people need to learn. And it's a lot easier. It's easy. I could sit here and say this, but then putting that into action, a lot of people will say like, because it's easy to say something, and it's just as hard to put it into action on your betting account. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Hell yeah, man. I'm looking right now. The thing that stands out to me here is this fight is being priced minus 115 to not go to decision. I think that this fight is probably not going to go to decision.
I don't think so.
I think that not only does Max Griffin have a chance to win this fight by knockout, Morales gets hit in most of his fights. He keeps his chin pretty upright on the center line. He's also a long, tall, lankier guy, could get kicked in the leg here. Max Griffin has taken out people's legs before in some of his fights. He's kind of weird with his footwork, bouncing in and out. That creates powerful leg kicks. It creates opportunities as well for him to get off with his hands, flying into range. So fun fight, aggressive fight. Lean towards it not going to decision here. Lean towards the favorite, but I think both these guys have power in their hands. And,
for sure.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised if either one of these fellas gets knocked out here. So that's my lean in this fight. It's just that this fight's going under.
We got to find the parlay buster, man. It's here somewhere, but we got to find it. It's out there.
Well, I can tell you my theory of this card is pretty straightforward. I think that the books are absolutely going to need one of Griffin, Lipsky, or Lee. And I think that, I have a lean about who that's going to be, but we'll talk about it as we go. Honestly, I wouldn't be too surprised if we saw multiple parlay busters on this card.
I agree 100%.
Because look at how many bigger favorites that we have, right? We have some favorites that are minus 600 and above, 2 of them, but we also have a couple minus 200 favorites all strewn throughout the card. And that's the kind of range that people are going to look to stack 2, 3, 4 of those, get to even money, get to slight plus money, and no problem there, but you got to pick your spots really carefully this week because the book doesn't make them all minus 225 for no reason. They're trying to make sure you add one that is going to hit with one that's going to crash.
And you know what? Like, I just think like next week's card, UFC 290, there's going to be a lot of chalky parlays that I think are going to hit on that one. And Vegas might be just, willing to give away some money 1 week. I've seen them do it before. And it's very possible. They might hit you early on the prelims, but you're going to get Rob. I think you're going to get Volk. I think you're going to get Jalen Turner. I think you're going to get Petrino. I think you're going to get those obvious favorites that you think are going to win. So I think they're going to – and I think this is one of those cards where people are really confident in the favorites, right? They're like, man, it's almost like no way the other side wins. You're just confident on that side. And I think we could see some fuckery here, for lack of other terms.
Absolutely. And as handicappers, I think it's important to know our strengths and our weaknesses, right? What we do well and what we're struggling with. And I know that I'm a much better underdog bettor than I am a parlay, guy. So that's not to say that other people won't have success with that method. That's not to say that you can't watch the show and say, all right, maybe I'll avoid that because Liam's super bullish on this dog, but I'm going to pick my own favorites as I go. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just telling you up front, what I'm good at is not telling you these are the 4 parlay legs of the card. I'm just the guy who's always looking to poke a hole in it to find why that parlay ain't going to hit, why this favorite shouldn't be minus 400. I'm a contrarian by heart. So I'm
Same.
going to bring that approach, and it's done very well for me. It's done very well over time. So it's not to say that it's going to work every time, but it is to say that that's how I'm going to continue to approach it. And I'm not going to, until it breaks on me, I ain't fixing it.
Balance, my dude, just balance. I think, maybe even we could bet a little bit more favorites. This is about how you choose your spots each and every week. And value doesn't mean necessarily an underdog, dude. It just, like, if Jake Paul was about to fight my grandma, and my grandma could throw a hell of a punch, but if Jake Paul was sitting at only minus 200, I don't care that he's minus 200, man. I'm putting my money down on that. And like I said, my grandma could cook some really good food. She could probably knock a lot of other grandmas out. But Jake Paul is gonna fucking punch her in her jaw, and Jewish Granny is going night-night. So,
dude, this is what people don't get is I actually can show on my Bet MMA tips. I have my best profit on big favorites and big underdogs because I'm willing to say, like, this is a favorite that is worth laying it on, but it's few and far between. I'm not going to do that every time. By the way, I said it last week on the main event. I thought, I didn't end up betting it because it was minus 3XX. I didn't feel the need. I didn't feel compelled to bring it to bear, but I just was like, I don't see a way that Ilia Topuria doesn't win this fight. I feel like he's too fast. I feel like he's got footwork. I don't worry about his 5 round. But again, these are the things where if you say it every time, you're going to end up picking, the parlay buster every so often. But I really try and pick my spots because you need more layers of certainty with a favorite. That's what the favorite tag implies. We're talking about a minus 300. We're already saying 75% of the time he's going to win. So if he's not winning 80% of the time, I'm not getting the best of it. I'm just along for the ride. So to your point, you said Jake Paul and your grandma. I could give you Shavkat Rakhmonov and Neil Magny, right? I think when people watch that fight after the fact, they could agree with me that it's hard to say that Shavkat wasn't like 90% there. He easily got takedowns every time he wanted. He's the more dangerous guy on the feet, and he's the much better grappler. He's going to win that fight, right?
Oh, yeah.
He was minus 400. That's a gift. It won't come back again. Like if they fought again, he's minus 1,200 like Joe Anderson Brito this weekend, right? So it's just a different story. And I think that was a spot where I was very confident. I was very comfortable. But most often, I'm looking to go the other way with big favorites because most people in MMA don't justify their prices. Most people in MMA are volatile. It's the most volatile, stupid, and ridiculous sport in the world. I love it for that very reason. But that's what you got to take into account. So the level of confidence it takes to part with a big favorite in this game, it's got to be somebody that negates offense. It's got to be somebody that puts people out in the first minute before the fight gets going. Things like that, because otherwise you're just playing with fire, and eventually you're going to lose one. And the thing is, if I get one wrong at minus 500, I got to get 5 right to get back to where I started. This is what people are missing from the mathematics, right? It's just if I get one underdog wrong and one underdog, now we're printing again. That's all it is. I go on streaks. You don't have to get every dog bet right. Don't try and be Nostradamus. Just pick your spots along the way. But with that being said, a lot of people are trying to pick Ariane Lipsky as their dog of the week. And I can somewhat understand why. Number one, we've seen in the past, she's shown some real flaws, right? She's shown absolute problems on the mat. And you and I can both say if you're in these kind of situations where the only person you look like a good grappler against is Luana Carolina, it's a problem. But then I also will say, looks like she's invested in her self, in her camps recently. She's been showing up much more prepared, a little bit more spirited effort, I feel like, out of her as well. So that's some positives from her. And she's a dog here again, right? She was a dog when she got the win over Aldrich, and she's a dog again here. So it's not to say that she goes to a position where she's, in a clear winning spot. But I bet Gato big last time out, right? She was a plus 140 underdog. The only time I bet on both these women, I thought this was a funny anecdote. They're both plus 140. They both lost, right? I bet Ariane Lipsky against Shevchenko, Antonina Shevchenko at a plus 140, and she lost that fight, dude. Sickening. And then I bet Gato plus 140 against Tracy Cortez. Close decision. Shouldn't have went my way.
I was very
Gato
close.
Eventually just made the wrong decisions, I felt like. Pulling guard, putting herself underneath. Just some low IQ decisions. And so for me, that's the problem with her at this big chalk price. Is like, I just saw you go out there and make some negative EV decisions.
All right.
But do I think she should be favored here? I do think she should be favored because I think she's the more dangerous person on the ground. And I think that on the feet, she can hold her own in this fight. I think she's very powerful. I think she's got better kicks than her opponent here in Lipski. But I think Lipski is the superior pocket boxer. I think she throws a little bit more in combination. I think she's a little bit more confident with her hands. And I think she's just a little bit more consistent with her volume, letting her hands go. Her takedown defense is poor, but it's getting slightly better, right? I did think that we saw some evidence of that last fight. I just don't know what to make of this one because I think if Gatto goes for takedowns early when they're dry, we could be talking about, wow, Lipski really is just so bad on the mat. I can't believe it. But if she doesn't, if she waits around a little bit too long on the feet and kind of plays patient, she was getting later finishes in these early fights in the UFC. Then she goes with Tracy Cortez. She has the competitive fight, but she never really just put her foot to the gas for a finish in that fight. I didn't feel like. So that's what I'd want to see from her here, right? I think if this fight goes to the cards, that's not what I want to see at a -2XX price tag with her, especially because I think she doesn't always do enough to differentiate herself. But I do think she's impactful, very muscular, very strong, extremely strong for the women's division, as a matter of fact. And I think Lipski's got her hands full here. So until proven otherwise, I think that advantage on the mat is the biggest gap in this fight. But I do think that Lipski has some slight upside as a dog because I think the pricing's a little aggressive. Kind of like for the last fight, I would make it a similar -185, +185 type of deal because I see where you should be advantaged. I see where you have a clear path. But I also just remember you making some bad decisions last time out, and I'm not going to forget that, because you get the win, or I'm not going to forget that because you have some other big finishes and the girl that you're fighting is somebody that I think can be exploitable, because that's something that fight IQ capping is one of the most important things out there. Knowing somebody's going to make good decisions is half the battle. Then if it doesn't work out, it's like, okay, well, they tried their best. They gave me everything. But if somebody has the skills to win a fight and you bet them and they don't do it despite having the skill, it's a very frustrating experience. So that's what I'm looking to avoid here. No bets on this fight for me, but I also lean a little bit towards the fight doesn't go to decision here. I think both these women are violent, aggressive. I think that the one problem for Gatto with the guard pulling and stuff here is she could eat some damage underneath if she does not, get the sub. So I do think she probably gets the sub here, but not extremely bullish, not as bullish as a lot of people seem to be this week. What do you think about this one?
So immediately I look on this one and I see, Gatto is a -200 favorite, right? I believe she opened at around that price tag as well, if I'm not mistaken. If we could pull that up real quick. And even some more money coming on her because I believe she's sitting around now. What price is she at now, Liam?
So I'm seeing best available on Gatto -225 on Bet365, and the best available on Lipski is about +200.
Okay, and what did it open?
Let's check here.
I believe it was -200, but I just want to make sure I'm not saying.
So Betway opened -175. Okay. Bet365 opened -160 on Melissa Gatto.
Okay, so fair enough. And then money came in on her. She got to around -200 pretty quickly. And we saw some more money leak a little throughout the week, and she's sitting at -230. And that just immediately catches my eye because Lipski on the other side came off that last performance and she looked amazing. She looked like a completely different fighter. All just kind of looked slow. She was just not going for the takedowns the right way, telegraphing them, and Lipski was just able to defend them all. I do believe she looked a lot better in that fight. The thing to me here, man, I think Gatto just has the grappling advantage, and once this fight hits the mat, I think that's going to be a wrap, fellas. And as much as I'm not a huge believer in Gatto's wrestling, I think she's going to be able to get Lipski down. We could see some of those past problems from Lipski's takedown defense on her. So I just can't get behind a Lipski bet here, man. I think Gatto's actually the sharper side. And the thing I like to do with female fights is everyone says always bet the underdog, but I like to bet the female that I believe has the grappling advantage. And whether that means she gets on top of this fight or pulls a submission from the bottom, I just think she's the better overall consummate grappler when it comes to just jiu-jitsu and MMA jiu-jitsu versus Ariane Lipski. And yeah, you could say she has the striking advantage on the feet. I just don't think she's going to get JJ Aldrich and it's going to be a 15-minute thing where, Gatto's just trying to shoot takedowns and none of them happens. I think eventually she's going to get it to the ground versus Lipski. And the thing is with female fights is they're females. They don't really hit that hard. It's not like this is heavyweight or light heavyweight Sure, Lipsky, she can punch. She's not like a soft hitter, but she doesn't have knockout power. We saw in the JJ Aldrich fight. JJ Aldrich was able to eat all of her punches, right? It's just she wasn't able to get the fight to where she wanted to, and she was outstruck. Gato's striking isn't like that bad either, in my opinion. She actually has some legitimate striking. I could even see her standing with Lipsky at points in this fight, but she's not going to win a pure stand-up match. Yes, sir, Yanel Hashmouse. That's my dude, L'Chaim. So I got Gato in the spot. I think she's going to be able to eat the punches that Lipsky throws her way, eventually get to some type of clinch position, get this fight to the ground. Like I said, this is a good spot for me. If this line was even closer, I would be on the Gato side. So look out for that in the future, guys. I like the female with the grappling advantage. We saw it recently with girls like Blanchfield, etc. That huge grappling advantage, I think, really matters, especially in the lower female weight classes. We're not seeing as many knockouts. So girls who are willing to get into that clinch, like a Tracy Cortez, get these fights to the ground. They're not getting knocked out. They have a dominant advantage on the ground. These girls don't really even have the best technique to get back to their feet either. We see that with Ariane Lipsky. She's getting ground and pound TKO'd by Antonina Shevchenko. Come on, guys. This is Gato all the way. I'm not getting fooled on that last performance.
Yeah, and that's where I tend to come down the same way, man. Also, just the last time that I bet on Lipsky was like 1 unit plus 140 against Shevchenko, and she dropped the ball for me, which is a really bad look in my opinion. Just like really hard to forgive. Whereas the Tracy Cortez loss was very close. It was within the margin, and Tracy's a much better wrestler, and she took her down. So for me, those are all the things where, like you said, you don't want to let recency bias get to you here. Yes, she lost. Yes, she let us down. Yes, it was annoying. Yes, she made some bad decisions, but she's also probably more talented and has more paths to the victory here. So I agree with you. She should be favored here. It's just a matter of degree. And I think that unless some love comes in on the dog,
too much. It's too much at this point. It's too much at this point.
I'm curious what her ITD is priced at. Gato ITD is only plus 130. That's pretty disgusting.
Yeah,
but the 510.
What's the sub?
The 510 out there that you can get on the KO is interesting because Lipsky has a bunch of ground and pound losses, dude.
Oh, yeah.
When she gets taken down, she covers up pretty quick. So that I think is interesting to note. But I also think in this case, when I'm looking at plus 270 on the sub price, I kind of think it happens, but I don't love the price.
I think you stick with your fight doesn't go the distance, because then if Lipsky does so happen to KO her, I guess you get that little bit of value because the sub could happen or the TKO could happen. We've seen that with Lipsky, so I would stay away from the whole inside the distance or prop thing. And if you're gonna lean that way, maybe just go the fight doesn't go the distance, like you were saying before.
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting, man, is we had last time a 170-pound bout welterweight, and the price was minus 115 on the fight doesn't go to decision. This is a fight between two women at 125 pounds. It's minus 115 on the fight doesn't go to decision. So very, very interesting to note that from a theoretical standpoint. Certainly you'd think 170-pound men a little bit more likely to land the knockout shots, but I think that the reason it's being priced the same is because the submission equity so much higher between the women. So
for sure.
Good note there. Next up, guys, the main card is going to have 6 fights. So the 5th fight here would normally be the main card opener, but we've got Benoit Saint Denis and Ismael Bonfim in the 2nd fight, on this main card. And really, really interesting fight at lightweight because both of these guys have some hype on their name. I think Benoit Saint Denis, the line will tell you his hype is not as strong, right? But he's been looking great since he came down to 155 pounds. Went out there and got 2 finished wins in the UFC, not over the highest level of opponents, but basically I felt like the UFC felt bad. They were like, yo, sorry that we almost got you killed by Easy Dose. So what we'll do instead is we'll send you down to 155, give you a couple welcome landing spots. And now, this is where the rubber is going to meet the road a little bit, right? Ismael Bonfim, nobody to sneeze at, nobody to trifle with. We've seen how dangerous he can be, right? And I think that Ismael Bonfim last time out was the time to bet him, plus 115 against Terrence McKinney, a guy that very talented, but we know has a little bit of a hard time pacing himself over 15 minutes. So for me, I felt like Bonfim was not going to have any issues in the cardio. Felt like he was not going to have any issues with the stand-up. It was either going to be, he gets meme knocked out, or he's going to be very competitive throughout and has the chance to knock out McKinney himself. And then I thought that the grappling was not going to be an easy path for McKinney in that fight. I didn't think that he couldn't do it, but I didn't think he was reliable to do it. And I didn't think he could pace it over the course of 15 minutes if he needed to. So that was all my hesitation there on the McKinney side. I bet Bonfim. I bet him by knockout. I bet him by KO in round 2. So one of my favorite positions, a read that turned out, on the money. But the thing here where, I had that experience last time, and I'm thinking about fading Ismail Bonfim here. So, if that doesn't tell you what I think about Benoit Saint-Denis, I don't know what will. I think Benoit Saint-Denis is as tough as a fighter can be. I thought that he was, beat within an inch of his life. He never showed a sign of quitting, dropping, falling to the ground, stayed upright, hands up, tried to return fire the whole fight. When he felt like he had nothing to give, he was literally running backwards in circles, trying to find his footing. Just seems like a guy who's not going to quit on himself, and he really wants to be out there. On top of that, he's a soldier. I've said this before. You guys can think I'm adult. You can think whatever you want. But the way that I handicap fights, if somebody is a soldier, that is a plus 0.1. I got to give you that X factor, right? Like, this person literally is willing to go to war. This person is a soldier. Like, I cannot rule that out. Special forces. We've seen the Tim Kennedys. We've seen the guys that are insanely, tough, right? That just normal human beings, even normal fighters, look at them sometimes and go, what is wrong with you, dude? I can't believe this stuff. So if you give me that guy at plus 270 against another warm body, I'm like, I might have to just find out, how wrong could I be here? Because I think Bonfim, probably a better striker, pretty clearly. What about the grappling? He hasn't been faced with a significant grappling test in a while. You know what I found interesting, right? My favorite thing on Bet MMA tips is the past bets that you've placed, right? I had actually bet quarter unit on Abasov by sub against this guy, Bonfim, on Contender series. So I thought to myself then, this guy at plus 900, he could get submitted. Now you're giving me the same price basically on the sub with a guy in Benoit Saint-Denis who's very dangerous on the ground, who's extremely aggressive on the ground. The only thing that would make me hesitate is that he might try and ground and pound if he gets him there, because he is a savage, a marauder. He's just going ham, coming forward, trying to put shots on you, and he's doing it for 15 minutes. So I feel like that's the kind of guy that I want to put my money on. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But it's like, I'd rather be wrong on the plus 270 here than I would be trying to chase 75% indication in a lightweight fight where the bigger guy who has a grappling upside potentially is a plus 270 dog. That's just not, it's not something that you'll see me play. When Bonfim was the dog, I gave him very close look and consideration, and it was for good reason. I don't think that he is a favorite that you'd be embarrassed to play. No, he's a very good fighter. But again, people were very hip to that fact. He opened in the minus 240 range, and now he's all the way up, above the minus 300 range. So God bless. Good luck. Not saying it can't come through, but it will be a dog or pass situation for me. There's no ifs, ands, or buts on this one. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, man. No, I agree 100%. The thing is with me is the striking differential. I think Ismail Bonfim by far is the way better striker. This fight is going to be a grinding clinch situation. The thing with McKinney is the dude gasses out like crazy. You could say, oh, Benoit Saint-Denis slows down. Because you look at that first fight, man, I think that was a bout of nerves. I know, how can you say this guy could be nervous? But the guy was stiff, a little bit rigid, came into that fight. But you see that in his pre-UFC tape as well. Just a little bit herky-jerky in the striking. I think he's a little bit slow. And Bonfim was able to put out McKinney. I understand y'all in the comments saying it's overcorrection. I think the price is off. But I think this is another one of those situations where we're kind of getting sucked in by the price, right? And, there is a path for him here with the takedowns. But we saw McKinney wasn't able to really get him down there in that fight. And I think Bonfim could be improving as well. Sure, you could say Saint Denis as well, but he took a lot of damage in that fight versus EZD, however you would say it. And then Dos Santos. I'm not saying all those names together. There you go, Oive. You got it, my dude. But in the last two fights against lower level competition, he did look really good. But I think if you were betting this fight right after that EZD fight, you would be getting a way different price tag. So I think you could even say I might sound crazy here, and in hindsight, look stupid, but I think there could even still be some value on Bonfim. I think he's going to win this fight on the feet. I think he's going to be able to avoid the one thing that Benoit Saint Denis has, and that's the thing that I like to mention a lot of the times. I like to bet against one-dimensional fighters. When you look at Benoit Saint Denis, he's striking to get into the clinch. He can't just go out there and shoot telegraph takedowns. Gonna have to mix it up first, and I think in those striking exchanges, Bonfim's gonna get him out, and he's gonna get him out early. I like Bonfim here, early knockout round one. Maybe you could go like round one only. I'm sure the line would be crazy juiced on that though. So, man, it's possible Saint Denis finished him, so finish only could be a thing. I like Bonfim here. I like him as a parlay piece. That parlay piece is. Yeah, I like him as a parlay piece. Like you said before, we got to be careful when picking our favorites. But I like this spot. I think just the striking differential, Benoit Saint Denis is going to get pieced up when he's up there. He's not able to make this a grindy, clinchy fight. Yeah, but there's on that other end he does, and then I look like a complete idiot. But I'm going with Ismail Bonfim here. The Bonfim bros.
It's about being selective, but it's not going to be perfect, right? We're still going to be human, going to get some wrong along the way, but it's just about trying to find the right spots. And for Bonfim here, if his grappling checks out, yeah, he probably does look like he justifies his price. But here's the one consideration I have, right? Which is just, I try and think about what can I separate from opinion and get down to away from subjective analysis and into objective analysis, right? And for the objective analysis, I look at, past fight odds, right? Things like that, how the market looked at them before. And so the market change on this fight is what's, compelled my attention, because Benoit went from being, I actually believe he was a smaller underdog. Let me just pull this up because I don't want to speak out of turn. So Benoit Saint Denis, oh God, it doesn't come up. So let me see if I can find it from Dos Santos. So bear with me here, folks.
Take your time, man. I think whoever wins this feat, UFC is
go
going to
ahead.
be happy. I was all I was going to say. Either way.
Oh, no, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Both these guys bring the kind of fight that the UFC wants to see. High octane, a lot of violence, a lot of aggression. So you look at this, right? Last time when Elysée Zaleski fought Benoit Saint Denis, check this out. Plus 190, minus 225. Bro, I asked this question to somebody on my show this week as well. If they fought today, Elysée Zaleski and Bonfim, who's favored? At 170? I don't think it's a question. I think it's obvious who would be favored. Zaleski. He's way more UFC experience. By the way, he knocked out the fucking headliner of the show and put him into the dirt, right? He hit him with a spinning kick and made him go all over the place, right? That's what he did to Sean Strickland. So easy dose, your first UFC fight. You have the worst referee of all time. He doesn't save you from yourself.
Oh my God.
And you just stand there and get battered around all over the place. And people are saying that you have no chance to beat this guy. I'm like, I don't know, man. Because I think that Bonfim could make us look so dumb as Benoit Saint Denis backers here on this side of the table, right?
Yeah.
If he goes out there and just knocks him out, because he clearly has the ability. He clearly is very patient, and he's extremely dangerous. The guys that he lost to, you can't even hold them against him. They were 7 years ago, and every one of them is aces. So it's just like, all right, yeah, I can't even say that these are bad losses. But then I have two guys that neither one of them has a bad loss between them. And one of them's a little bit bigger, and they're both at 155, which is a globally elite weight class. And they're going to meet in the octagon. You give me one of them at plus 270, I'll find out. I'll find out on the other side.
I don't blame you for taking the dog shot at all, man.
It'll probably be small. It'll probably be a small bet. But
I'm not betting on. I made it maybe sound like I was betting on Bonfim before. I just think he's the side here more than anything. The price may be a little out of hand, but man, I think he can make it look. Sorry to disconnect the road. I think he can make it look easy and make it look quick. I'm gonna go with Bonfim to get the job done here.
Love it. So there we go. We got a disagreement on the second to last fight on the main card. Let's see what we got for this first fight on the main card, man. Another one where, number one, you look at the face-off between these two guys, I think people would be surprised by the odds, right? Let me see if any love has come in on our guy Ruziboev. No, it's actually going all the other way. So
Yeah.
we're seeing Bruno Ferreira opens at minus 138 according to Best Fight Odds. I believe it opened even a pick 'em on some offshore websites. Now it's up to minus 225. So basically goes from being less than 60% implied to over or right about 70% implied here. So pretty big move in favor of Ferreira on the money line. And Ferreira went out in his last fight. He proved that he could beat a guy who's in the top 25 in the UFC, you know, a fringe top 15 guy in Hobocop or Robocop, whatever you want to call him. Brazilian guy with a lot of jiu-jitsu credentials, powerful banger on the feet. But I also think that if you contextualize that win and you talk about the fact that Robocop went fucking punch for punch with Daeun Jung, or not Daeun Jung, excuse me, Jin Young Park, like literally they just stood in the pocket, bang, 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 and then one of them fell over. It's like that kind of fight suggests that he could do that with anybody at middleweight. And just as long as you're a tough guy and you can bang, sometimes he goes down, sometimes you go down. You know, it's just going to be that way. Very volatile fighter. And so at the plus 250 mark, I think Ferreira in that spot was an obvious bet in hindsight, right? And pre-fight, I understood why people were taking the shot. I don't think I did myself. In fact, I'll pull up my previous bets on these guys just to take a look.
I was so upset I didn't take.
Oh, dude, you know, those are the bets that always get you. The ones that you don't make that you should have, you know, or the ones that you consider taking and then you don't end up getting to. But yeah, man, I think I'm curious to hear what you think about this because I've heard a lot of talk this week about Ruziboev might be a fraud. You know, I thought his grappling, he makes some weird choices, but I don't think he's bad. I don't think he's totally bad though, dude. Here's what I thought. I thought that the Kimuras, right? If you ask me just based on reading Tapology, I'd be like, anybody who's just going for Kimuras at this rate against levels of skilled like this, probably not going to be very good. But then I saw his body type and the way he interacts with these guys and the way he's finishing them. Some of the more recent Kimuras I didn't think were great, but there were like a myriad list of examples on the regional scene. And the guy just seems to create a ton of torque because of his height. So he like gets over their arm and then turns it in. And it doesn't even look like it should be finished. And a lot of guys are tapping. Yeah. It didn't seem to me like a signature move, you know, like a guy who just has a very weird way of hitting something.
That would be crazy, man, because that's
I don't think he's hitting a Kimura on this guy.
Nah, man. And that's so for me, that's what I call a desperation. That's what I call a desperation Kimura because it's not like he has the full guard. I think he's sitting in like half guard when he's finishing, if I'm not mistaken. Correct. And he's in the half guard on the opposite side. You're asked to get crushed in that position unless you have a really good grip on the arm. But I think some more advanced guys are going to be able to get out of that, get to that top position, get that head and arm control. I actually like to see Bruno use the wrestling here. Now, I know you could say, well, this dude's training out of Sean Brady's gym. I believe Renzo Gracie Philly, great gym. And I definitely agree with that 100%.
Stand up, Team Enzo Grace.
But dude's just beat Gregory Rodriguez, who's legit UFC level competition. So we know what we're getting here with the Bruno Ferreira side. On the other hand, from what I've seen from this other guy, I can't even pronounce his name. You know, there's a part of me too that believes, you know, people are going to be watching this, seeing these quick finishes and thinking he's somewhat legitimate. Just, you know what, we haven't seen it yet. Now, if Ruzbaev or whatever his name is comes out here and absolutely proves me wrong, well, then so be it. But I got to put my money on the Ferreira side. I think the value's basically gone right as where we're at. If we see somehow back to that minus 200 range, I would definitely consider putting a bet on Ferreira. I believe the sharper money's on that side. And when we just look at his level of competition, it's absolutely awful. I think you got to factor in level of competition here. You can say the same for Bruno Ferreira, but he has the win over Robocop, at least at the UFC level. And you could say maybe in that position he was an underdog, but and you're getting him as a favorite here. But like I said, Gregory Rodriguez, way different level of competition compared to this guy. This guy has not fought anybody yet. And like you said, he's winning in these weird, wacky ways. So I just got to see what I'm getting here. I think this may be just a complete pass at this point. See where you're getting with this Ruzbaev guy. So Bruno or pass for me here. I actually really kind of lean Bruno in this situation because I don't think this guy's legitimate either. I don't think he's a complete fraud, but more in the range of like maybe like a little bit better than Hussein Askabov.
Dude, you know what's funny? I actually think, so again, like what I always like to do my first look, right? I take a look at people's record, things like that. And if there are people I know, I already have a pretty well-fledged opinion of most fighters that are in the UFC. I research them before they get here, if they come through Contender Series, things like that. But Nursultan is a guy that I never had researched, right? So I just see a guy with so many fights that's not that old. And like, I'm thinking to myself, this just all seems fugazi, you know? And when I was watching it, he did strike me, and I didn't watch any of the fights that he lost a decision. So that's one thing, is like I will go back and do that before I part with any money here if I was to.
If they're there, if you could
yeah,
find
exactly.
them.
If you can even find it, if they still exist. But what I did see is when I'm watching the guy, he's huge. He's an absolutely massive guy for the division. He doesn't look the most muscular, right? And that's kind of why he gets barreled over on takedowns and stuff sometimes. But he's massive, right? And I think he can hit pretty hard. I think he can hit from far away. So the one thing that I'm concerned about here is Ferreira was absorbing 5 strikes per minute in that fight against RoboCop until he got the knockout. So it's not like he was like out there showing off his defensive prowess. He was showing that I'm better at brawling and standing and banging than RoboCop is. But we've seen RoboCop tested in the chin before. That's like the one real criticism of RoboCop is like, the guy almost got his face like ripped in half by Chidi Njokuani. He got knocked out by Jordan Williams. Like, he just doesn't have a great chin. His ability to take damage is one of the worst aspects of his game. So Ferreira comes in, right? He doesn't have that many fights, but he's a ball of muscle that hits really hard. He's an explosive power guy, and he takes him out. So I just worry, are we overrating that win? Which is great. It's a great win. But if he was to fight the guy who's ranked 5 spots below RoboCop that has better durability and could push him to a 15-minute decision, what does that fight look like? We still don't know. But last time, that was the whole argument for why he should be plus 250. Is the guy, what about his cardio? What about this? This guy has bad cardio based on the fact he's 2-6 in decisions, right? So it's not to say Ruziboev is going to clearly have better cardio, but what happens if we get this drunk mash of 2 guys that are both death gas because they thought they were going to finish in round 1, and now they're both leaning on each other and just pushing into the fence? That was where my guy XBL kind of just struck a chord in my brain when he said Ruzi decision. I think that if this fight plays out how people expect, Bruno Ferreira is going to be a star in the UFC. You're going to get another big knockout, or he's going to take the guy down, smash him on the ground, and he's going to look great. But I worry about the fight getting extended. I feel like Ruziboev needs less things to go right in this fight to win. And all I mean by that is I think he could land from further away. So if he doesn't get inside of range, Ferreira is going to have a hard time. If he doesn't get on top, I think Ferreira could have a hard time. So these are kind of my contrarian elements. But if I think you offered me this fight at pick'em price, I have to take Ferreira. I said on my show this week, it's like hard to price him anything less than minus 125 with a real win in the UFC over a guy like RoboCop. When this guy Ruziboev, you could go through his whole resume and never find somebody you heard of. So I don't think that Ruziboev has no chance of winning fights in the UFC. I think he's going to get better, right? Especially now, going from Uzbekistan, where you're the big fish in maybe a smaller pond, to being in the States, training in Philly with world-class guys coming in and out of the gym frequently. I feel like that's going to get him better, but it still may not be ready to go out the gate this time. So that's where it becomes a fascinating matchup for me.
That's a great point, my man. And on top of that, I think we really just seen some early respected action come in on Bruno Ferreira, and that's why the line started to move. But now at this point, I don't think you're getting the better of the price tag. So a great point. At this point, you might want to start looking toward the underdog and how ways he could win. And as you said, if he's not able to get inside the range, man, here, this guy does have a chance. His striking isn't the worst from what I've seen from him so far. It's really the grappling that I have a problem with. And, just mainly the level of competition. If you look at Bruno Ferreira pre-UFC, and you brought up a great point, his level of competition is virtually just as bad. He's not fighting anybody. Now, like I said, the RoboCop win was great because it's a UFC level win. But just like you said in that fight, defensively, a little bit of a liability. I think you really brought up some great points here. And this might be like I said, I might just stay away from this spot and just see what I'm getting here with Ruziboev because I just don't know yet.
I agree. I think it's a big wait and see spot. And the reason I could be talked into the plus 200 at this point on Ruziboev, if it gets there,
it's plus 200.
Yeah, it's about to be plus 200.
That's a lot.
That is when I'm saying to myself, can I think of enough unknowns here? Can I paint a colorable case for why this guy could win and what we're missing? But I can't make that same case. If there's unknowns and we're dealing with a minus 230 now, that's where I'm like, I don't want to find out. I'm not going to pay to find out about the unknowns.
No.
But I think Ferreira has a higher ceiling in the UFC just based on we've seen a lot of guys who are short, stocky Brazilians that can get takedowns and knock people the hell out, have a lot of success in the UFC. Right. So not going to rule that out. But, man, I think a fight that we're both extremely excited to talk about, Kevin Lee and Renat Fakhretdinov. There was a couple fights this week where I said I wanted to wait till weigh-ins, and I'm not always Mr. Weigh-in guy or something like that. I'll give a shout out quickly as we move off this fight to my guy Sigma Uchiba. Says, what do you think of Bruno Sub? I don't rule it out at all here. I do think that our guy, length gives and takes away, right? So if you're a big, long, lanky guy in the grappling, I think it makes it easier for you to get subs. I think it makes it easier for you to finish people. I think it makes it easier for you to get finished when things go sideways, when you get tired. I think there's just more ways for people to attack you. So a couple of things that I'm looking at. What do you think about that?
Talking me into him, man. You're talking me into him. I think, the thing the thing with Rusboyev, he, like I said, he is at that gym, and we just got to see him against that competition. But he is at that gym, though, and that gym is known for grappling. Guys are going to be on him every day trying to submit him. So what we haven't seen in fights, could show up here. He's still young, still improving. So I do think we're going to see some improved grappling from him. And if he's not able to, the thing is the takedown defense is going to improve. I don't think, I think that's going to be tough. That's something that takes a while to get down packed. And, if Bruno's able to just completely out wrestle him here, that's a thing. But I think you might start seeing him get back to his feet, maybe using that Kimura to even sweep here instead. I think you're just going to see a little bit improved grappling from this guy coming out of such a good grappling camp.
Love it, man. Love it. That's something important to pay attention to. And speaking of guys coming out of a new camp, making improvements, last time we saw Kevin Lee inside the octagon, if my memory serves, I could be wrong about this. I believe he was still at TriStar MMA, working with our guy Faraz Sahabi. He's a guy who's bounced around all over the place, gotten a bunch of different looks over the years. And now he's training at Killcliff FC, training with a lot of great guys, Gilbert Burns, getting rounds in. So it seems like Kevin Lee's done a lot of things right. I've rewatched this week the Diego Sanchez fight. I felt like he got too much grief for that fight, to tell you the truth. I don't think Diego Sanchez is in his prime. No, I don't think it was a great fight for him. I don't think we should be like, wow, that's Kevin Lee's career best performance. But what he needed to do was get a win and get back to the UFC. That's what he did, despite some adversity. Dealt with a knee injury early on in the fight and still was able to knock Diego Sanchez down in round 3, was able to take him down, was able to control him, and was able to do most of it at will. So I felt like Diego was smart. He tried to kick the shit out of his leg and run away from him all night. Those were the two right things to do in that fight. So it just showed a veteran savvy guy doing everything right to make it a hard night at the office for Kevin. But Kevin fought it out, won the fight, showed consistency. Now he's been outside the octagon for a little while. I think we could expect improvements from Kevin Lee. And that may sound silly, how, his knees have given out and this and that. But he's been working in silence, in the quiet. Nobody's watching and paying attention and pointing all the lights and cameras and everything like they were for most of his life and career in the UFC. He's had a lot of experience, had a lot of really high-level fights. Didn't all go his way, right? Went through a tough period, a tough season in his life, things outside the octagon, got suspended, all sorts of different things. Seems like a more mature guy who is coming back to the cage this weekend. Seems like a guy who's ready to be there, but you listen to the interviews, he's still saying it's stupid they're at the Apex. He's still got a chip on his shoulder. He's still Kevin Lee. He doesn't sound like a guy who's broken and doesn't want to be there. He sounds like a guy who's very motivated to get back to work. And I feel like that's what he's going to do this weekend. Renat Fakhretdinov, I laid the minus 255. Talk about Liam never bets a favorite. I laid the minus 255 when this guy fought Andreas Michailidis. Because it's Andreas Michailidis, right? We're not talking about somebody like this. And I think that it's all contextual, right? When you give me somebody like Kevin Lee, who has 2 wins in the UFC as an underdog over a Gregor Gillespie via knockout, right? Took his head off, decapitated him, sent it from, I said this week on my show, he sent it from MSG to the Prudential Center, right? He just absolutely blasted that guy. I don't think Gregor's ever fought since, right? He just, my guy's fishing or something, right? Kevin Lee is a problem for people, dude. Kevin Lee is not somebody most guys want to sign the dotted line to fight. And I think that what's happened over time is people have forgotten a little bit about what Kevin is and about how good he can be, right? As a wrestler, as a grappler, that's where he shines. That's where he excels. People forget him picking up and slamming Tony Ferguson with Staph on his chest before he absolutely gassed out in that fight. Yo, if y'all have never had Staph, it's exhausting.
I wouldn't fight. I wouldn't fight.
Have you ever worked out on
You
antibiotics,
could
bro?
die. Like,
Working out on antibiotics is torture. It is torture. It makes you feel like a lesser version of yourself. So Kevin is already a guy that doesn't have the best cardio you've ever seen. And then you add all those factors on top of it, that hurts, right? When you work so hard your whole life to get to a spot and then you fall off the top. All right, Kevin Lee, he struggled, man. He fell down. Oh, it's all very public and in front of us. I think he's going to, in the silence of the apex, in this smaller venue, in this prelim opportunity, I think we're going to see a better version of Kevin Lee than we saw in a lot of those high pressure main events for the young man that we saw before. I think there's a much better contextual situation for him. I think Renat is a tough opponent, but a beatable opponent. Renat went out there. He had every position he ever wanted against Bryan Battle. He didn't finish the fight. And Bryan Battle has fought half the times that Kevin Lee has fought. And he's fought half the quality of competition that Kevin's fought. So I think people maybe are just looking at two guys that have looked way different in their recent fights. But one guy's been fighting aces, best guys in the division. And another guy's best 3 wins are Eric Spicely, okay? Fucking Andreas Michailidis. And then Bryan Battle. So it's just like,
hey, and we got to mention here, Bryan Battle in that fight. Take it for a grain of salt because this is always all hearsay. But I watched the interview with James Lynch. He came in on that fight super short notice. That's what we know. But he also had a stomach virus and a possible injury there, saying the UFC was trying to stop him from taking that fight. And they couldn't stop him. He still winds up taking the fight, going up against Renat. And that's Renat's best win to date. So.
And he didn't finish him with all those circumstances.
He's not a finisher,
right?
He's not a finisher.
He's not a very violent finisher. Certainly not in the same way. And I think that for Kevin, I almost hesitated to make this public, but I mentioned it on my show this week. Kevin Lee has 2 wins as an underdog in the UFC. They're both by first round knockout. Okay. When people underestimate Kevin Lee, it sends him to a different headspace, and I think it gets the best out of him mentally. I think he's going to be the much more violent, much more aggressive fighter in the cage come Saturday night. So it's a fucking hell of a fight, but I think a lot of people must have forgot about Kevin Lee. Let's see what this says. Only -200. Seemingly everyone is in love with sus vibes on this one. I love it. I love it, XBL. Love it. My freaking brother. That makes me happy to hear. And again, it's not to say that Renat hasn't looked good, but you could sell yourself on any fighter in this game, depending on the context, right? And for Renat, the sell is easy. That's the thing. The sell is easy. He controlled every minute of his last couple fights. What is the wrestling credentials of Bryan Battle? Yeah, nobody's going to ask you that this week. What is the wrestling credentials of Andreas Michailidis?
He's not even in the UFC.
Dude, his wrestling credentials is that he tried his very best to hug chest to chest with Alex Pereira for as long as possible so he wouldn't get knocked out. That's it. That's his wrestling credentials. So, again, it's just not to say we're not taking anything away from Renat, but we're saying, in my view, this is a pick'em fight at worst for Kevin. So I don't think that Kevin Lee loses the first round of this fight at a very high clip. I think he wins the first round.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Again, things that are going to make you like an underdog selection. So for me, I'm leaning Kevin Lee. He's another dog or pass fight for me, and I will be playing the dog here.
Yep, and Renat, like you said, is not a finisher. He's a guy that's going to get on top. He's going to try and get you to that mat return position, keep that body lock on you every time you try to get back up. He's going to try and drain your energy. I think Kevin Lee knows that, man. And the thing that a lot of people don't know is I know talking to people that were around Kevin Lee at the time of the D-Rod fight, I put a bet down on him. And you know what? The word is he just really wasn't taking anything seriously. And just look at that fight. The dude was training at one gym. It just so happens to switch his coach, 5 days or 7 days before the fight and go with Faraz Sahabi instead. That was a weird sign to me because that just shows where his head was at that point. Just a lot of mental mistakes, a lot of things going on, and now, as we know, injuries as well. We go look at he gets cut, leaves the UFC, Diego Sanchez fight. Probably one of the worst looks you could have because the general narrative, Diego Sanchez, is he's washed up old guy, when he was with Fabia, but he actually came out looking a lot better in that fight. And we're talking about a guy that's on one leg here, guys. Let's all be serious. Now, if you want to say, oh, well, he has bum legs, right? This is 2023. Like those can be repaired at this point. ACL is not as big of a deal as it was years ago. Now I could be looking like an idiot here. Like we could both look like an idiot here when Kevin Lee comes out looking like the next version of Darren Till, or just somehow just so happens to shoot his way into a guillotine. But I just don't think Renat's that guy. He's not Charles Oliveira. We're talking about Charles Oliveira here, guys, or against Tony Ferguson, like we said, with staff for a world title. And just so happens to wind up in one of the best guards. Like let's give Tony credit, man. At the time, that dude's guard was dangerous, man. And Kevin Lee was able to get past it. He was able to pass it for 3 rounds on Oliveira, and then the mental lapses come. This is only a 3-round fight. We're seeing him at Killcliff FC, and from the word that I'm getting is this guy's taking it seriously, my man, talking to people around. And I think we could see that even as well in the physique. And if that doesn't mean he's just taking it seriously, that means he's on that Usman EPO. He's getting the needle, and we're going to see a better cardio version of Kevin Lee. And I think cardio can be improved over time as well. Like you said, we're not getting much out of him on the social media, moving in silence. Renat Fakhretdinov, for me, just hasn't fought anybody. And you could say Brian Battle, yeah, trash takedown defense, but he was also, in my opinion, a version of Brian Battle that wasn't ready on 17 days' notice to face a guy like, Renat Fakhretdinov. Renat Fakhretdinov, on the other hand, only KO win coming against Eric Spicely. His only legitimate guy that's fought UFC level competition. We look at that fight any deeper. Eric Spicely, in my opinion, just wasn't supposed to be in the UFC.
Lost to Duran win, brother.
And then 2 losses after that by knockout. So that just goes to show you what we're getting here. I think Kevin Lee's the better striker. We're not, he's just striking to get into the clinch. And when it becomes a little bit extended and he's not able to get those takedowns, his striking gets sloppy. Maybe not so much offensively, but specifically defensively. And he's very hittable. We've seen Kevin Lee put the lights out of people before. A lot of people liking the over 2.5 in this spot as well. And that's another thing that I want to mention. I think the finishing potential here is all for Lee. Kevin Lee finish only sitting at around plus 150. I see somebody said plus 180 as well. I think that's insane value here. I don't think Renat ever gets a finish in this spot. Obviously, it's possible, but think about that value real quick, guys. I'm going Kevin Lee here. I think he gets the job done by knockout. And I'm putting a decent chunk of change on this one, so I'm going with Lee. He has the wrestling credentials that the other guys haven't done in the past. And we look at Kevin Lee, man. He's always been confident that he could beat that Dagestani style of wrestling, and it just makes me wonder. With everybody on the side of Renat Fakhretdinov, the line is not moving, or it's moving the other way. Actually, guys, 80% of the handle on Renat Fakhretdinov. I'm done talking here. What else do I need to say? We're both on the same side. I can't keep it a secret, and we didn't even really talk much about this before. I kind of just told you I was on Kevin Lee. You said, man, I agree with you, and a lot of the things you're saying I'm agreeing with here. So I think we line up more times. I think the last time it was Carini Silva didn't get the read right on that one, but in that spot, and I go back and look, the line did not move, or it didn't move the other way. A little, the line respected the Carini Silva action. In this spot, it's not even respecting the Renat Fakhretdinov action. So, inshallah, brother, I'm a Jew, but he's a Muslim, fake Muslim in my opinion. But this is
here's the tricky part though, because this is actually my deeper, let's go 3 layers deep on the narrative. All right, because you got Renat Fakhretdinov says, I will never fight a Muslim brother. And then they offer him Kevin Lee. And they basically, by offering Kevin Lee, were like, yo, take this Kevin Lee fight. You understand what I'm saying? And he was like, all right, fine. I'll break my own thing, whatever. And then he gave Kevin some I don't know what it was. It seemed like some kind of religious symbolism. Right. He handed him something at the weigh-in today, and they seemed to be bros or whatever. But when Kevin Lee is inside the octagon, the last word I would use to describe the man is religious. He is a brutal, violent man. He absolutely mercilessly kicked Gregor Gillespie's head away from his shoulders.
And stared at him.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that guy right there is a vicious, violent person when he is in the cage, and I like that about him. And I do think that Muslim Kevin could go on the list of people like C-Level Kane and all these other people that become superheroes in their TRT tour. Right, this could be it. Muslim Kevin could be the next special fighter inside the UFC. So
for sure,
everybody,
the highlight after this week will either be Kevin Lee is washed or Kevin Lee is back, and I'm going with Kevin Lee is back.
I love it, man. Back and better than ever. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
And I think he deserves it, man. He put in a lot of time, a lot of hard work, and I don't think the Kevin Lee story ends this way. So, shout out. Cocaine Bones, a part of that too. Shout out.
What's up, my dude?
Our guy Big Bird in with all the hotness today. Appreciate you, dog. But that being said, guys, let's move to the biggest favorite on the whole fight card here, Joanderson Brito. Really interesting, man, because Joanderson Brito, he's been my guy, but he's not a guy that you expect to see as like a minus 1,200 in the UFC. I think it speaks a little bit more to his opponent than anything. He's obviously a good prospect, fun guy, dangerous, but he's also a guy who invites a little bit of chaos into his fights. I think, I'm drawing a blank. I always confuse Bill Algeo. It is Bill Algeo. Okay, great. And Billy Quarantillo. They don't look the same, but they're both featherweights with similar names. So they just get scrambled in my mind over time. Basically, though, that Bill Algeo fight, I bet on Brito, right? And he didn't get the job done. It was very close, nip-tuck kind of decision there. But, a lot of people were like, Brito's a fraud. He fucking sucks. Can you believe this? And I was like, it was an awkward style. Algeo's really hard to submit. He had good positions. He took his back. He mat returned him a couple times. He just couldn't really find a way to finish him. And it was a UFC debut. It slowed down a little bit, got a little bit tired because he tried to kill him. And when you try to kill somebody, Mike Tyson used to say you can fight for the knockout or you can fight for the decision. Either way is fine, but you got to pick one. And that was kind of what we saw from Brito. He fought for the finish. He did not fight for the decision. Our guy Bill Algeo fought for the decision, got it done there. But against Andre Fili, they ran out a plus 250. They gave you 10-1 on the inside the distance, and Joanderson Brito sent that man to the land of wind and ghosts with a shocking quickness. And then he goes out there his next fight, Lucas Alexander, a guy that people were fading with Steven Peterson last time out, right? Shockingly enough. But again, why? Because Lucas Alexander was made to look so bad by Brito. He just instantly took him down and submitted him. So I feel like in this kind of fight, we're probably going to see something similar, and we're probably going to see it lined that way accordingly, right? So I think for Weston Wilson, he's a guy that is coming in. I talk about these guys, the guys that are related to somebody else in the UFC, friends with a guy, they kind of just have another way to get their name into the bucket, because most guys with 8 losses aren't getting their name in the bucket when they don't have a standout win, on their resume. So I think that that's the real problem for Weston Wilson here, is he's a guy who's happy to be here. Right. And I think that there's some guys in the UFC that are like that. It's not an indictment of him either. He probably should be happy to be here. It's like a great accomplishment. He put in his time. He put in a lot of effort, energy, all this stuff. But they didn't put him in a position to succeed. They didn't put him in a position to be extremely competitive. It's not a pick 'em fight. They put him in there with a guy that they expect and want and will not be happy if he does not roll over this guy with a shocking quickness. Brito was the guy who's supposed to be here. Weston Wilson's the guy who's here now because we made a call, right? So I think this is a great point. So Wilson about to most likely get the treatment Jim Miller's opponent got a few weeks back. And I can definitely see that. But I also could see Brito coming out here and easily submitting this guy. So it's a tricky enough fight. I understand why Brito in round 1 is so juiced, because he fights extremely aggressively and he's got an opponent that's overmatched. So it seems like if he wants the sub, he could take it in this fight. And if he doesn't, then he will have some competitive striking exchanges maybe. But Brito hits so damn hard that you just don't think a guy like Wilson with that kind of taller, chin exposed type of fighting style will be able to last. What do you think about this one, man?
Yeah, dude's a fucking tank. And my bad if I'm looking up a little bit. I'm just looking at my phone here. Also might have even just heard an animal. I'm a little bit shook because I live by a forest. I'm sitting outside right now, and I'm not sure what's about to run up on me. But listen to you speak right here, man. The under 1.5 is juiced to minus 280, and I want to see something real quick. Oh, Lord. Wait, no. This can't be right. The under half a round is sitting at plus 190. Does that make sense? What is fight doesn't start round 2? because we think Brito's going to get it done in round one. I mean, it's pretty probable that he gets it done early, right? Just like dude said, he can get it done.
Fight won't start round 2 minus 225.
But why? So why is under half a round on DraftKings sitting at plus 190? That's
You got a
very.
2.5-minute window. That's what they're giving you. And honestly, that's probably really low historically for an under half a round.
No, I understand, but when we probably look deeper into it, when the guy's minus 1,400 and the other guy's losses are all by finish, like let's do the math here, guys. It's probably going to be really early for Brito. So, and Brito has some early finishes as of lately too. He's gotten some round one finishes. So versus even lower level of competition, who's to say he can't get it done quickly? And just like you said, he's about to get that Jim Miller treatment, my dude. If he doesn't get knocked out early, which I think is the most probable thing, he's going to get taken down and I think submitted. So let's hope for the knockout early. I think plus 190 is actually some pretty good value there, in my opinion. So if you're looking for a way to bet this fight and you just want to get action on it somehow, some way, I'm not suggesting that this is, actual value necessarily. I'm going to have to do a little bit of a deeper look into it. But if I was to approach this fight and I had access to DraftKings, man, I'll be going
his
with
last 2 fights, it seems, went under that tally, like under the 2.5-minute mark.
Right.
And like you said, better fighters that he's going against. The one thing is you assume that this guy might just run away from him. Yeah. The entire interest of this fight is to see if Wilson survives to round 2. Basically, my man, that's what we're trying to figure out. And I got to just say, my brother, safety first. So if there's an animal coming at you, I'll solo it out.
Dude, I thought I just saw like a UFO. So either I'm really just high, bro, or some extra.
You know what it is? The bookmakers have an elaborate scheme. They're like, we don't want this guy too focused on taking our bread, so let's just send out the distractions.
Fucking animals and UFOs and fucking. I'm high, so pardon my language, but this is freaking crazy.
I love it, man. We've got 4 fights left to break down. And, we've got so many Brazilians on this card. We just talked about Joanderson Brito, Lipsky and Gato. We got Brazil on Brazil Crime, Bonfim, Ferreira. A lot of Brazilian prospects going to be on this card. And rounding us out here, we got Carol Hossa at 145 pounds, taking on Yana Santos. And my man, I'll be so brief on this fight because I don't give a shit. I do not give a shit about this fight overall. I think that both ladies, unfortunately, have let me down in the past, right? I think Yana Santos probably towards the end of her career, right? Not a girl that I expect to be making a huge bevy of improvements time over time. But at 145, I think she has some upside here. Carol Hossa looked a lot more flat in her last couple fights at 145. So I don't love to see it. I didn't think her volume kept up as well, going up a weight class. So just a couple things that have been a little bit concerning for me. She's much younger. She seems like she's more committed to her game. She seems like she wants to be there a little bit more. So those are all positives, but her takedown defense is terrible. The fight against Sarah McMahon, I know Sarah McMahon could really wrestle, but that fight showed just such a lack of willingness and urgency to try and get the hell back up to your feet. It was embarrassing. Like she's just laying on the ground, knowing she's losing the fight. And that's annoying. If you're betting on somebody and they care less than you about the result of their fight, that's going to kick you right in the nuts. So I think that was a problem for me with betting on Carol Hossa at chalk, right? It's like, I don't always see the consistent level of motivation. I don't see the desire, the willingness, the ability to finish as much as I've expected it from her in the past against winnable, like beatable opponents. I mean, Sarah McMahon is a consistent breaker in the 3rd round. She had opportunity, position, and she couldn't make her do it. So just real flaws fundamentally from both of these women. But, one of them's got a plus money tag. So I could almost be more sympathetic to that side, but I don't like it. I don't like this fight. I'll pass on it entirely.
No, I agree. I agree with you 100%. You got to look toward the dog here, and as much as you want to bet on Rosa, I think everyone's talking about the wrong way in this week. We're looking to see if Romanov is fat. Man, you said she looked flat at 145. I thought she looked fat at 145. Yo, my girl was looking a little bit chubby on the scales, looking a little bit like Romanov in that Volkov fight. So, the female version, I think you got to look toward Yana. But Yana, on the other hand, like everyone's saying, a little bit, on the end of her career, kind of not taking it so much seriously. But you can't say Rose is taking it seriously in that shape. A huge red flag for me. I actually think this is dog or pass, my man. I'm with you here. Women's dog or pass. That's it.
Always a smart approach, right? Just not investing too much in these women, unless they are like really proving it to you, right? Unless they really have something, but most of the time, not the right approach.
Fucking
So
no.
if you said to me, Liam, there are no odds for this fight, make a pick, I would pick Carol Hossa. I just feel like she's been a little bit more consistent over time, but I don't like it. You know, I don't feel inspired by that pick at all. So shout out to you, Pico Graham. Appreciate you asking, but my man, not very bullish on that pick. Talking about the next fight here, we got another Brazilian prospect here. Maybe a little bit less up on the totem pole, right? Our guy Elvis Bernier, he just don't get the love, right? He comes in, he's a plus 470 against Zubaira Tukhugov, takes the fight on short notice, flies 30 hours to Perth, gets the win. And honestly, I didn't think it was like a clear-cut win. I thought it was every round of that fight was very close. I thought that Zubaira probably won the second round clearer than any other round. But then I felt like rounds 1 and 3 were a toss-up, and I actually sided with Brenner when I was watching it live because Zubaira was committed to just punching the face, just going with boxing offense, and he wasn't very active with it. He was taking, every so often a boxing attack, every so often a left hand. I just felt like he wasn't landing a lot of his combinations. He was landing the second and third punch of some of them, but he wasn't getting off cleanly. And so what happened was he was getting kicked to the body, he was getting kicked to the legs, and he just was overall getting slightly outworked by a guy who picks multiple targets on the body and goes for them all. Guram goes for multiple targets on the body. Guram is going to throw more kicks. So that is going to make this a much more competitive and hard fight, I think, for Brenner, right? I think that the other difficulty that Brenner is going to have in this fight is that Guram could probably take him down. He's more physical. He's very strong. Zubaira, guy who's at 145, didn't look to be in his best shape ever, said he struggled immensely with the weight cut as well for that fight that he had with Brenner. So for those things, you give a little bit of a knock to that win, maybe take a little bit away from that and say, all right, let's contextualize this win for Brenner. But still, he's getting a win in the plus 500 range. It's like, that's an impressive thing to do. He showed a lot of composure there, showed he could fight hard for 15 minutes on very little notice. So I liked a lot of what I saw there. He took some hard, clean punches to the chin. He didn't seem like he was hurt. He never acted like he was scared. He stood his ground. He alleviated pressure. How many guys do we see in the UFC that get pressured and just fall apart? But he was getting pressured. And again, he's on short notice. Nobody would hold it against him if he falls apart in some of those exchanges in round 2, where a guy like Zubaira is just pressing him. But again, you look at Zubaira's run in the UFC, there's never been a guy who bested him via, just easily dominating him. It's all split decisions. It's guys have to eke one out over him. Zubaira's a tough guy to look good against. Who was a tough guy to look good against? Guram Kutateladze, right? And he's been a dog in both of his previous UFC fights. People would be surprised to hear that, but that's the truth. And he went out there, he's 1-1 in those fights. And now he's minus 600. So those are the theoretical problems I have with placing this bet on Guram. It's like, yeah, he should win the fight. Yeah, he's the more athletic guy, but he opened a minus 270. He's sitting at a minus 600. And Elvis Bernier just proved to you last time that when you give him a close fight that could go to decision, he'll be in the fight. He will fight hard for 15 minutes and try to win. So I think that if Guram finishes here, he's going to look like he justified his price. I think if he does not finish, it is going to be a much more competitive, much more honest fight. And I don't think he's going to blow this guy out of the water, because I didn't see Guram going out there and attempting takedowns at a super high rate. I didn't see him blowing out anybody on the volume, on the stats. He's throwing about 60 to 80 strikes per fight. I'm talking about significant strikes. Brenner's going to do similar. I think he's probably going to throw about 65. So it's like, if Guram gets off on his upside, like 80 significant strikes, he's probably going to win a close decision. That's honestly how I feel about it. So if I think you have a chance to win by finish, but barring that, it's going to be a close decision down the stretch, I can't imagine laying minus 600. And Guram isn't a guy that has all that much proven finishing equity at the UFC level. Again, it's not to say it can't happen, but we haven't seen it yet. So now we're saying it's a lock. It's a certainty to happen here, when we just saw Elvis go with a guy like Zubaira and fight him tit for tat for 15 minutes. So I think the athleticism gap is huge, but after round 1 would be my potential to enter on Brenner in this spot, I think, as well. I think he's probably going to get beat up, moved around. I think Guram faster with the kicks, going to land early. But what does Guram's cardio look like? He's been extremely inactive. He's a guy who's been bouncing back and forth. I'm not sure. Like, there are just too many unknowns for me at this minus 600 price tag. So those are all the things I'm looking at here. Shout out to our guy Big Bird again. I think this is my guy Pierce, if I'm not mistaken. Says Brenner split decision plus 2,800. I mean, yeah, I just simply don't have any way to push back on that. I mean, he just showed in his last fight. He's very capable of it. That's how Guram fights sometimes, a little bit close within the margins. He's a guy raising the hand of his opponent, the one fight he won in the UFC too. So let's not forget, this guy's a nice guy, right? He might not push his pedal to the metal and really try and get you out of there. He might just be a little bit more complacent. And that for me is a huge problem at minus 600. Excited to hear your thoughts though, brother. Is Elvis Brenner a dead man walking? What do you think?
No, I think that's the way to bet it right there, because we've seen him in those close split decisions. So if you're going to take Elvis Brenner in the spot, I think that plus 2,800 is a bet. And I know a lot of people put a little hate on this dude, but Yanni the Greek, he actually had a good point on this fight, and he said, Brenner outperformed the market in the last time. He won as a plus 500 favorite. Now he's coming back at that same price. It's hard to outperform that 2 times in a row. If this guy comes in and beats Guram Kutateladze and Zubir Tukagov, that would be insane, right? So we can't just.
And he's destined for the top 15. I'll tell you that
for sure. We can't just necessarily just throw that money on him just because of that price tag, because it doesn't mean we're going to get that money back. I think skill for skill, Guram is a lot better, but we have seen him in close fights pre-UFC. That Eric Da Silva fight was a little bit funky. He should have probably ran through him in that fight, and it wasn't necessarily the case. So if the guy is in close fights, he hasn't really shown the finishing ability, like you said, at the UFC level. We go back to the parlay buster. Guram's in a lot of people's parlays this week, just sitting at minus 700. It's an easy way to get Renat down, or take some juice off of an over 2.5. We just add Guram into the parlay, and that happens a lot of these weeks.
Let me add something from a theoretical standpoint that I think makes it even more complicated fight. And I haven't heard anybody talking about this. Last fight, what did the takedown dynamic look like between Tuhugov and Brenner? Do you remember? Nothing happened. They both attempted a couple takedowns, but nobody got one. So we don't know what their takedown defense really looks like because it didn't get tested, right? It was all half-hearted, reach for your legs, you hit a half sprawl, and then we both clear out and start striking again. So for me, Brenner, when I talked about how he had ways of alleviating pressure, that's one of the ways. He would just shoot a takedown that he did not want, and as soon as the guy reacted, he'd run away, skirt off the octagon. So I felt like he showed some savviness, some things you don't expect to see from a guy making that UFC debut. And yet on the other side, we've got Guram Kutateladze, who is 2-2 in decisions, if my memory serves. Let me double check. No, excuse me. He's 4-2 in decisions and 1-1 to the submission. So basically, it's hard to knock the guy out. He's a Georgian warrior. He's got the chin like Merab, right? He does all these things. But if he doesn't knock this guy out, I think we're getting a fight where, he's 5-3 in fights that end in sub or decision. He's a much more average guy in that realm. He hangs out with Khamzat Chimaev, doesn't make him Khamzat Chimaev, right? It's like he doesn't fight the same way. So again, all these things just point me to a little bit of overvaluing on a guy who's very good and probably should win. And I don't think you'll see him priced again like this if he fights somebody who's even similar talent to Brenner. So those are my hesitations here.
Brenner's, and Brenner's a tough son of a bitch too. He's got a good chin, comes from a gym and shoot to box. Those guys are known for their toughness. So
that guy's
I like to read on this one, man.
Before, and he keeps coming back, right?
Exactly, man. I actually kind of like Brenner in this spot here because of the reasons we've been talking about. I think Guram's going to be in a lot of parlays, just kind of considered as a lock thrown in there. I got to go with Brenner as a small play, but
he's at the plus 520 on the money line.
Split decision plus. I think our guy Pierce is on something here. Plus 2,800 for a split decision is absolutely insane. And we saw him get the robbery last time, so obviously the judges like his style. Guram was in close split as well. Obviously, the different level.
Let's get Charles in the corner. Let's get somebody from Shoot the Box that everybody recognizes, hyping up the crowd to steal one. Come on, boys. We could do this. It's at the Apex. You could steal anything at the Apex. We need louder Brazilian judges going, oh, like that. Like, that's what I need.
I could also see Guram going for the finish, balls to the wall round one, not getting it, and slowing down, and Brenner taking over.
Dude, this is the thing that I said all week. I was like, Guram Kutateladze for 7.5 minutes is way better than this guy. But the rest of it, he just sort of turns back into a normal guy. And like, if you're a normal guy for 7.5 minutes, my guy Brenner is going to have a chance if he's not dead yet. So for me, live entries, Brenner on the money line, Brenner split decision, like my guy Big Bird says, those are some things I'm going to be taking a very close look at on this fight. But I do think it's an underdog or pass situation at the line. I like Guram, right? I wish good things for him. He's a fun guy. But unless he's going to be more active, the UFC does not give a flying shit. You could be the best fighter in the world, and if you're not on television, it's a television show. So they don't care. All right. So just at the end of the day, that's what I always come back to. Guram, great for business if he's a consistent player on the UFC schedule. If he's not, they are going to forget about him. They're going to do what they do to other guys and give him the hardest fights on the shortest notice, on the smallest platform until he goes away. Because when you kill off good contenders, but you're otherwise not reliable and consistent, they don't like you. And you can look at our guy who came on the show, Saeed Yakub Kakramanov, really good fighter at the time, was probably asking for money because he's like, I'm good, I could beat people and whatever. And they're looking at it like, this guy's not yet selling pay-per-views for us. All he could do is destroy other up-and-coming talents and make them look like zeros. So like it's tough for business. You got to remember the business elements too. So next up, guys, here's a fight talking about business. Eris FC, somewhere that the UFC has been starting to source some talent from. They're bringing shows to France. They're developing those relationships. They're developing relationships with the promoters, with the coaches, and they're also developing it with Eris FC, right? Shows on UFC Fight Pass. They like these people. They like their fighters. And you can look in the background of some of these fights that Petrovic was having on the regional scene in Eris, and you see Mick Maynard and you see these guys who are taking in her fights and keeping an eye on her along the way. I think that when I look at this fight, I say to myself, why is Luana Carolina in the UFC? And I have a very strong opinion of it. It's that she is enhancement talent. She is brought in to lose to other people. That is my honest opinion. And it's not to say that she doesn't win fights, right? I think she's 3-3 in the UFC. But the UFC, in my view, does not care if Luana Carolina comes, goes, or if she's never here again. She's just a person on the roster, used to fill airtime, used to fight other people. Whereas this Petrovic girl might be something, might be someone they care about in the future, right? And they don't know yet. So they're putting her in there against a beatable girl. But we've seen Jacqueline Amarim, high-level prospects, people that we like, people that we expect to do well. They come in and they don't always look themselves. They don't always look their best. We've seen people have UFC jitters. So that's the thing that keeps me off the -200 money line here. But I expect that the favorite is going to roll because I think she can change the dynamic of this fight with one takedown. I think on the feet, Luana Carolina is a cleaner, better striker than she is, but I don't think it's by such a huge margin. I do think that Petrovic, her defense is terrible, like a lot of MMA fighters, especially young ones, but her offense is fine. There's times when she throws a 3 and a 4-piece combination, and you could tell that she comes from a striking background. But then you see her cover up like this and just move away from 4 or 5 oncoming strikes, and you say, okay, she is definitely a grappler in MMA. And then you see her on top in grappling and you say, okay, fair enough. Like when she's going against these girls, they're not very high level, but Luana Carolina, I hate to break it to people, it's not very high level on the mat. And so when I look at this fight, I say to myself, Petrovic probably just has more paths to victory. If she gets this girl to the ground, she could TKO her with ground and pound. She could ride out top position, or she could submit her. And the thing I love to see, and some people will take their film studies differently, right? I'm seeing a girl who's only 6-0. So I know she's going to have flaws. She's going to have problems. She's going to face small adversities within her fights because she's so inexperienced. She's still coming along. She's still learning and growing. But what I saw from her was she would late in rounds, like let's say a minute, 2 minutes left in the round, go for a takedown, try and get on top. And when she would get a takedown, she would try and instantly pass, move to the next position, use ground and pound to get to the back. She is aggressive on the mat. When she gets the takedown and has it secured, she becomes very aggressive trying to finish. I like fighters like this. So that's what I'm looking at with Petrovic. And I'm saying there's going to be some dicey moments. There might be better opportunities to enter live here. But I think if she gets a takedown and they're both somewhat dry, she's going to work her over on the mat. I think she's going to pass the guard. I think the TKO is live from the mount, but I think she's probably going to give her back and get finished because we haven't seen somebody audit Luana Carolina on the mat in some time. Lupi Godinez, she's a good wrestler. She's not a great grappler. She's still coming along in that regard. So she didn't even attempt a lot of offense from on top. She just got stuck in the wrestling phase. And that's what I noticed as well. That's a back and forth one with a girl bumping up a weight who just wants to wrestle. I think Petrovic can wrestle because of what I've seen. And I think that she will get on top in this fight and probably get the win. But we've seen these -200s in WMMA are where people go to get heart. So
Ugh. And you know what the thing is with Lana Carolina, man? I can't bet her, man. She's not even profitable as an underdog. And on top of that, you just can't predict this lady, man. She comes out sometimes looking super great. Like she could be, half of the roster in women's MMA, and the other ones is just embarrassing. Knockout losses by spinning elbow to Molly McCann, gets submitted by Ariane Lipsky by knee bar. So this girl is an absolute boomer bust in my opinion. But as you said, UFC, who do they want to win? And in my opinion, it's clearly the newer girl here. Is Petrovic up to that? I think so, actually. I think, this is a wait and see what you get, though, with Petrovic at this level. But as you said, Luana Carolina, hate to break it to you, right? Like, she isn't high level. So, uh, once again, we're going to go back to what I said before. Female with the grappling advantage. I don't think Luana Carolina is out here knocking out Petrovic. Petrovic is going to be able to get to that clinch, get her to the mat, and that's it, fellas. So I'm going to be going with Petrovic here, but I just need to see a little bit more out of her. So I'm going to watch this fight, and I'm not completely sold on her either. So if she looks great here, I may even look to fade her in her next time out.
Shout out to our guys sparring with reality in the comments. Says fight violence, both women, binary fight opportunities to finish. It's plus 160 as a matter of fact. For the fight doesn't go to decision here. So I kind of like that.
Is that
17-9 for
135 or
Carolina
125?
on the capper sheets. Oh my
Damn.
God. Say again.
Is this fight at 135 or 125?
I believe 25. Let me double check.
So I believe that's the weight class where we're getting a lot of finishes as of recently. We saw the Macy Barber one. Lipsky's extremely favored. So
And let's not forget, Luana Carolina got spinning elbowed into the outer realms of hell by Molly Meatball McCann. What? Like, it's just insanity, dude. So yeah, no, absolutely no way I can get to Luana here. I'm not even like hating on people that get there. I understand the underdog shot. You got an unproven girl on the other side. We've seen it go, sideways. But for me, leaning Petrovic, leaning violence here. And yes, this is actually a good point though from Luke in terms of covering your bases, right? If we've got a girl who's not that high level and has been dropped regionally, which she has been, we talked about striking defense. Yeah, fight doesn't go to decisions, a way that you can kind of, push off some of that risk while still maintaining, hey, I think she's going to win. I think she's going to get the finish. But if things go sideways, I'm covering my bases still at plus money as well. So
she's unproven. Who's to say Carolina can't get a finish here?
Yeah.
On top of that, she's a legitimate striker. I think it's very possible. Petrovic could very easily gas here in the situation if she isn't able to get. And like I said, Luana Carolina comes out looking like, she could be anybody or half of the roster on women's MMA roster on some days. And then sometimes she's getting finished by Lipsky. So I'm going with the under here. I actually really like that, especially if this fight's at 125. We've been seeing a lot of finishes at that weight class. So for whatever reason, I'm gonna go with this one. Going with the under 2.5.
Love it. And our guy Brian actually keeps track of how other YouTubers are, leaning on these fights, right? And it's good for me, public accountability. Somebody else keeps track of the picks that we give out on the show. But on top of that, looking at that and saying 17 out of 25 or 26 cappers, basically, or I'm just doing math on the top of my head here, 65%. He's saying too many people loving the underdog, and that I totally agree with. Seems like Carolina's been getting a lot of love this week, and it's understandable. Petrovic has flaws. So when people see flaws and a favorite and WMMA, I can't even push back. Like, I understand why you get the other way. But it's all got to be, a case-by-case basis. And for me, I think the one girl is a girl on the rise, and I think Carolina is a girl who's destined to be a little bit more stagnant enhancement talent in her UFC career. So I like violence, and I like the favorite here.
I do too. I really do. Great point as well. Can I ask this guy though, what's the capper sheet on the Kevin Lee Renat Fakrdinov fight? Because I believe every single person probably took Renat Fakrdinov besides my dude Liam right here.
25-2 Renat on the sheets. 25-2. So 27 cappers, Lord. 25 are on
and you're one Renat. Of those. Are you one of those two?
I'm one of the two, baby.
Here we go, guys. So there's your answer right there.
Hey, and I'm willing to be wrong. I'm
Yeah,
willing
for
to
sure,
be an
for sure.
idiot. I've done it many times. And the other thing is, if you're never willing to risk being wrong, then you'll never be able to say, I called Bonfim KO2 when y'all told me it was McKinney and y'all thought you knew what time it was. So the thing is, sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong. It's a long-term game, but you go look at the graphs, you go look at the sheets, you look at how we do. We do okay on this show, right? We've been giving away a lot of free information for many years on this show and still doing well. So appreciate everybody that supports us and appreciate people that respect the process. We'll all bet differently. That's okay. But I think that I have proven that the way I do it is a profitable way of doing it as well. So we got one more fight to cover, brother. And it's one of the most fascinating ones that there is. So let's do it, man. Talking about weigh-ins, talking about things that matter. Last time out, I ended up taking Volkov on a very pure weigh-in read. I said, this guy is not showing up in shape. I listened to the interviews, and he had actually said, basically he disclosed what was going to happen. He's like, listen, so the thing is I fired everybody on my team, and I don't have a team right now, so I'm going around and finding a team. He's like doing all this while the fight is already scheduled. He's training at like a Moldovan local wrestling gym. You see the videos of him and just like, he's like lifting weights and like throwing bags around and stuff. That's not how you get ready for a fight, right? He's not training with one high level guy. Like he's in Moldova by himself looking for a team. That's the opposite of what you want to do to prepare for a cage fight, right? Especially at a high level. Volkov is a top 5 guy in the world. You know, if he's not, he's a top 10 guy in the world. So it's like, okay, that's the wrong guy to not have a good level of preparation for. And then he shows up looking fat as a house on top of it all. So it's like, if you're not prepared, but you're on all the juice and like whatever, all right, maybe we'll get some. I just looked at this guy and said, this is a self-immolation. My man doesn't even want to be here. And that's exactly what showed, right? Volkov, 1 takedown attempt, no dice. All right, I'm out of here. Just quits, basically just quits, right? In that fight, really didn't look like himself at all. The fight prior, I faded him as well. I faded him with Marcin Tybura +2 whatever XX. It's simply a stupid price, right? Marcin Tybura showed in that fight, his problems are that he can get overwhelmed, he can get finished, he can get beat early. But in fights that go the distance, he's very competitive. He keeps it honest. He can go for takedowns. He can mix it up with the volume. Hard guy to beat. So those are 2 really tough fights for Romanov. Did they do him any favors here, guys? Did they do something where they tried to do him something nice here? I don't think they did, right? At first I thought to myself, my gut read on this fight was he's going to take him down once because I've seen Blagoy taken down before. Blagoy definitely can get taken down, and he's going to finish him on the ground. That's how I thought about this. But I said to myself, number one, I know that this guy could just like fade and quit on me. So I'm not doing anything with this fight until I see the weigh-in. I said it from the outset, right? And I see the weigh-in today. And people had asked me on Twitter, do I think he looks as bad as last time? No, I don't think he looks as bad as last time. I know for sure he's more prepared this time. He has a team, right? He's been training in Maryland, right? East Coast, Beast Coast, stand the hell up. But, you know, this is maybe a little bit of my own personal biases showing here, and y'all can light me up in the comments if you think so. But if I'm thinking of the best place you want to go in the United States to get better at fighting, I don't know that I would pick Maryland first. It's not like a terrible place to go, but the place he's training doesn't seem like there's all that many high-level pros positioned around him. So maybe he's bringing some guys in. Maybe there's stuff going on the scenes that we're not seeing. But it seems like it's been primarily, mostly grappling situational training. He's got a combat sambo world champion that he's going to be going against in Blagoy Ivanov, who's very nondescript, who's very uninspiring, who no one wants to get out of bed to go bet on, truthfully. And I think he's kind of sucks. I always have. He's just
like he reminds me of Alir Latifi, bro. That's it right there.
He's a backyard shed part 2, dude. That is truthfully what he is. And the thing is, he's got the fun story, the getting stabbed, durable as shit, all of that. He's 36. In my view, soon he's going to get knocked the hell out and people are going to be like, oh, what the hell happened? But Romanov doesn't seem like that guy, right? He's not very powerful. So the question is, could he TKO him on the ground? Is he going to submit him? And honestly, I think he's going to take him down in the early going, but I don't know how potent his offense is. So for me, this is a ugly, ugly fight. I would love to enter on Blagoy after round 1 if he's like plus 250 or something like that. If he loses the first round and gets taken down, because I do think Romanov is shown himself to quit. He has shown himself to gas out. He showed himself to gas out when he was more prepared. So this is for me a little bit more of a measuring stick fight. I think Romanov should win this fight if he is going to be a real prospect at the UFC level eventually. because these are the guys you need to beat. Blagoy's been taken down by like Derek Lewis and people, right? Like along the way, he hasn't always shown perfect takedown defense. He hasn't always shown perfect game. He had great positions on Derek Lewis, went for a key lock and ended up getting like stood back up to the feet. So his ground game isn't perfect. It's not sophisticated either. But in this kind of fight, Romanov hasn't normally been super sophisticated on the ground. He's beating people with like forearm chokes and shit that doesn't work against good guys. So it's a really tricky fight for me, but I do think he has a chance of smushing him like a bug. You know, like the size of the guy, he still doesn't look like he's in great physical athletic shape, but he's 260 pounds. Like he can easily just weigh down on Blagoy. It really, for me, is about how early in the round the takedown would happen, but that's a lot of contingencies, right? And it's a chalk price, dogger pass for me.
Who says he doesn't gas either? So for me, I like the under 2.5 here on DraftKings because it's sitting at -125. Not 100% with the under 1.5 because I don't know if Romanov finishes him, and I think if it happens earlier, it's going to be Romanov on the Romanov side. If not, who says he can't death gas? And then on the other hand, this dude Blagoy gets it. So either under 2.5 or just fight doesn't go the distance. I like both of those bets, and this is a heavyweight fight. A lot of randomness here, guys, and you're getting let's just say it like this, right? I understand not all of Blagoy's fights go to finish. A lot of Romanovs do, though. When you look at it, like you're getting the same price or a similar price on a fight doesn't go a distance for a heavyweight fight as a women's MMA fight. That just doesn't make sense to me, my dude. So I actually like this spot for the fight to not go the distance. Romanov could easily death gas here and get finished by Blagoy Ivanov. And on the other end, I could see him finishing Blagoy here very early as well. If I had to pick a side, I'd lean that Romanov is going to be able to get him to the ground early, get the job done via submission. But like I said, if that doesn't happen, I think he's going to start to slow down like crazy. I know Blagoy isn't crazy power puncher, but we've seen him knock people out before. I really like this fight doesn't go the distance under 2.5.
Hell yeah, man. When you look at this kind of fight, you say to yourself, people are thinking, on the Blagoy side, it's Blagoy decision, most of the time here because it's Blagoy, right? And he doesn't finish anybody. And the thing that stood out to me too is I always try and keep track of how these people do in their odds range, right? Because on this fight card, Romanov is 5-2 as a favorite. But why is that not as impressive as it sounds? Because if you bet him every time, you didn't make money. He's been such a big favorite that when he lost, he cost you bread. And when he won, he ain't make you that much. So the thing about Romanov is here, it could either look like, oh, I'm so smart, like he was a short favorite here. And this is the biggest favorite in UFC history as a -130 against Blagoy Ivanov. It's just funny how this game goes, man. It's a fickle market and things change quick. So I don't know exactly what to make of this one. This feels like one of the more volatile fights on the card. When we're speaking of volatility, baby, we're speaking of violence. So I love where your head's at on the fight doesn't go, brother. But there we have it, man. 12 fights, fun ones, interesting card. We broke it down in depth for people. I feel like we covered a lot of different angles here. We had a ton of sharp contributions along the way. Shout out to our guy, Kyle, says Liam's goated for real. I have to retort you, my friend. The chat is goated for real because we still got 71 people rocking with us live at 4:19 local time. You know what that means. It's about to be 4:20. We're about to have to blaze up for the culture. And then your boy's got to write another article as well. So taking the information I just gave y'all and putting it down, putting the stamp on it, putting that, locking it in, putting it in stone every week, every fight on the card, every time. So appreciate you joining us, man. Appreciate you breaking down these fights. Anything you want to get off your chest, anywhere that the people can find you, please let them know all that stuff right now. And it's been a blast, brother.
There's actually 71 people in here at this time right now. You guys should be absolutely ashamed of yourselves. Nah, I'm just joking. That's ridiculous, dude. But nah, I try to give out the opinions as best as possible. We do have similar minds. We may not agree on every single fight, but the way we approach our betting is actually very similar. And I think that could provide for some good content in the future. And me personally got to get a little bit better on the mic. Sometimes maybe I shouldn't blaze up right before the show. Got to get a little bit quicker. And it's also a little bit late at night. So I'll probably go to work in 3 hours. I don't even know what's going on here. I'm chilling. I'm having a great time. I could talk about fights here all day, especially with a guy like this. My dude is a wordsmith, and not just a wordsmith. it's important when you're a content creator. I want people to realize this. It's hard sometimes to verbalize your thoughts, especially in a quick, free format. So I got to give respect to this dude. Actually, just sitting here on the other side listening, I'm learning a lot more than I would be maybe even on the other side. So definitely appreciate what you do, my dude, and keep up the good work. Y'all know where you can find me at MMA Bettor on Twitter. My Instagram is MMA Jewish Bettor. And I'm always ready to get these shekels, baby. You already know who I am, Money Mordecai. And let's go, Kevin Lee.
Absolutely. Let's go, Kevin Lee. Let's go make some money. Let's go build some momentum. Let's stack another win here. Each and every week, what you can expect from this channel, we're talking fights. We're trying to do it in a way that will, educate, help people do better with their betting, help people have a good time and kick back and relax, know that they're in the company of fellow fight fans. And we're just here to have fun, guys. At the end of the day, this kind of stream, especially, we're trying to just sit back, relax, talk through the fights, shoot the breeze, and, with like-minded folks. So appreciate each and every one of you guys that took the time. If you guys don't mind, drop a like on this video before we get out of here. Get subscribed to the channel if you're not already. If you guys are looking for a podcast, if you're looking for the shows available on audio, I do have all the shows that we do on YouTube available. Liam Picks Fights presents on all podcast platforms. You can find it easily. So guys, thanks for the support. God bless you all. Get some sleep if you need it. But, no sleep for me until the job is done, and the job ain't done yet. So the last thing I got to ask you, my brother, before we sign off, we got a great question in the chat, and it can only be answered by you. Can we get an early breakdown on Yanal Ashmouz and Chris Duncan for our guy Pierce? He wants to know what you think of this insane lightweight matchup. And I can tell you, if our guy Yanal is being dealt as an underdog again, I know where I'll be headed to the window.
Bro, that was the craziest call I may have ever made in my life. But there was just so much love coming in on Patterson. When I watched the film, I was just not a believer in him. I saw this guy was coming out of New Jersey. His flag was the Israel flag, and dude just looks just like me in his profile picture. So gotta go with Yanal Ashmouz, my dude. I don't think I could pick anybody against this guy, especially if he's an underdog. And isn't Chris Duncan that one dude that was on Contender Series who lost to Slava Claus? Is that the same guy we're talking about? He lost to
Slava Claus, and I bet Chris, what's his name? Or I bet Charlie Campbell fairly sizably. I think it was 3 units against him. I still think Charlie Campbell was the side. Like it didn't work out that night, and I'd do it all over again. So.
Yeah, and Charlie Campbell coming off a good win as of recent too, man. I think that wasn't a terrible bet. In all seriousness, man, I gotta look into it. But Yanal Ashmouz, by fucking brutal knockout, he's gonna have him convulsing on the canvas, just like he had Sam Patterson's English bum ass in his hometown.
Dude, when you review that tape, you will see that this guy, basically got knocked out 4 times in a row and then stood up and knocked out Charlie Campbell. He literally gets dropped, stands up, goes like this 3 times, and the third one hits him and he dies.
So lucky.
Yeah, dude, I literally was watching it live, and I just was like, I don't even know what to say. Like, I do it all over again. I still think it was right. This is a stupid sport we bet on, guys. You got to.
I took Campbell there too.
Oh shit, sharp. We'll get him back. That's what we know. But
yeah, for sure, man. There'll be plenty more.
100%. And there'll be more content from us as well, guys. So you can look forward to it. It's always a blast shooting the breeze. A lot of great friends of the show. But what I will ask from you guys, if you haven't already, drop a comment below your favorite bet on the card, future guests that you'd like to see, whatever it is. Always appreciate the feedback, and I will make sure I get back to all you guys that have dropped a comment throughout the week. So there you have it, guys. It's all done. The hay is in the barn, as they say, right? So the work is done. Now let's just hope that the results follow. But again, if it doesn't work this week, no problem. We're back next week. Accountability every time, talking about how we did and getting right back to work. So next week's the pay-per-view week. This is what we build up to. This is what we work on all year to get to these big moments, these big opportunities. One of the best fighters on the planet, Alexander Volkanovski, back in the main event, back in the saddle against Yair Rodriguez, a guy who's been a money machine for this show as well. So fascinating fights, a lot of great action to talk about next week. So get subscribed so you don't ever miss it. God bless. Enjoy the fights, and we'll see you next time, everybody.